Welcome everyone. Such a pleasure to have you here. I see looks like a little over 100 people are already on the call, and I'm sure that number will go up in the next few minutes. So welcome. We're super excited to have you guys joining the program, and we're excited to hear about all your results and get amazing testimonials from you. So let's first of all just make sure you can see and hear me okay. And Alex. Hey, Alex.
Yep. Hey, Ari, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Did you happen to get like a haircut in the last week or so?
Yes, it's by a professional stylist.
It looks good.
Thank you. No, I did it myself in about 10 minutes.
Well, that's impressive then, I have to say.
Thank you. Yeah, I end up every time I go to a hairdresser, I end up paying $60 for it and not liking it. So I just decided to do it myself.
You know, it's one of the most underappreciated aspects of being married to Brianna that I like, because she used to be a hairstylist, and so I just get my hair cut for free.
Nice. Wife/hairstylist.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. Did she do your makeup before getting on this live Q&A session as well?
I used to do Chris's.
Oh, really? Did he actually do makeup?
He wears makeup.
Oh, that's wow. That's
Interesting.
I don't. No, no. I just have a nice natural glow.
Nice. Okay, so oh, Denise saying I don't hear or see anything yet. Let's first of all just make sure you guys can see and hear. Can you people watching this just confirm for me that you can see and hear us? Okay, Ellen said, hear both of you fine. There's a little delay here, so apologies for that. I'm still waiting on, there we go. Okay, we got it. Sound and video is good. Okay, so hi, Lynn, Mary, Gretchen, Diane, Laberta, Deb, Teresa, Susan, Tara. Thank you guys for joining us. Mostly women, I think, actually. I shouldn't say guys. And yeah, let's get started. Let's do it. So Laurel said, I'm 66, postmenopausal. I'm wondering about the sequencing of infrared sauna and exercise. I typically do my resistance/cardio in the morning, followed by the sauna. My first meal is around 10 a.m. I recently discovered that I like to sit in the sauna first and get a good sweat on, usually 45 minutes. Then it's on to about 15 minutes of red light while I cool down enough before starting exercise. Basically, I'm curious about the switch up. Will this affect my attempts to reduce the dreaded abdominal fat? Okay, so did you guys follow that? There's a lot packed in there.
Yeah, I'm skimming it again just to make sure I'm getting everything.
I think the gist of it is she's currently doing sauna and red light before exercise and is wondering about switching it to the other way, which I would recommend personally. I would say do the sauna after the exercise rather than before. And red light can be potentially done before and after. If the goal is fat loss, then you might want to do it before, but there's actually studies both ways. There's studies using red light before and after, both showing improvements in fat loss. So the best answer to that one is do it both before and after. But
yeah, I'll add to that. I'll say that as far as sauna goes, the timing doesn't really matter. And for that one, I would say do it after, because you don't want to dehydrate yourself before you do exercise, because that could reduce your performance and just cause you to be more tired than usual.
Okay. I mean, if you stay in the sauna a long time, apart from the dehydration effect, it can be sort of, you can be fatigued from it.
Yeah,
I think through a separate mechanism other than dehydration, I would imagine. I mean, that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. Well, there's a reason why athletes need to acclimate to the heat when they are going to be racing in hot environments.
Right.
And it's for those reasons. The other part I just want to add is, the red light before or after. If you do it before exercise, it can actually enhance exercise performance.
Mm-hmm.
If you do it on the muscles that you're going to be training. And if you do it afterwards, it can aid in recovery and reduce muscle soreness.
Yeah.
But before or after, it doesn't matter either way. If you use it like on your abdomen, for example, it'll be beneficial for fat loss. It's just that you'll have, an some icing on the cake in terms of both enhanced performance and reduced like muscle damage and soreness if you do it before and after.
Yep, well said. Brian, you had mentioned enzymes. Was wondering which brand you like, also which detox supplements you like.
I like Enzymedica. Those are a little expensive, so if price is an issue, then now is okay. The super enzymes that they make. As far as detox, I just use liver support like milk thistle and dandelion and that kind of stuff.
Alex, you want to add anything there? Are we good?
Well, I will add that one of the areas that I do plan to update in this fat loss program, because as all of you know, I'm getting a lot of really good feedback from all of you, and I'm updating the lesson plans as we speak to try and incorporate some of the information you're all giving me about things that could be improved upon in terms of clarity or information wise. One of those things is I think I can do a better job of just giving people a checklist of compounds that can help their liver detox for when we're in those detoxification sections of the program.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Excellent. Let's go on. Okay. Danilo said, any tips for people working shift work? Man, I always hate this question. 2 weeks a day, 2 weeks evening, 2 weeks nights. Any suggestion on best what to do pre-post prep for shift changes? Yeah, I mean, this is one of those questions. There's no good answer, unfortunately. There's things that you can do as far as timing of wearing blue blockers and light exposure and blackout shades in your room and things along those lines, and you absolutely can and should do those things. However, it's going to be, your circadian rhythm is always going to be to some extent dysfunctional as a result of doing this kind of work. And so basically you're looking at how to like partially mitigate something that is guaranteed to cause harm over time. And of course you should partially mitigate it, but if at all possible at some point to get out of working night shifts, you should do it. I know it's easier said than done, but I always feel compelled to mention that. And you guys have anything to add to that as far as maybe specifics of how to do the
study that shows the shift workers that wore the blue lock?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have two thoughts that come to mind. The first is that the vast majority of research on individuals doing shift work has looked at a single intervention as far as how it impacts health, and that intervention is blocking out blue light. Because the fundamental reason why, or I shouldn't say the fundamental, but one of the primary reasons shift work is literally the only job that is classified as a carcinogen, is because when you work overnight, when your melatonin is supposed to be rising up, which is the most potent mitochondrial antioxidant in existence, the light stops that from happening. So you basically go 24 hours without any melatonin. And over time, this just absolutely destroys mitochondrial health and predisposes to diseases like cancer. I'm not trying to say that to scare you or anything. That's just the fact of the matter. And it's one of the reasons why Ari says that, try to get out of shift work if you can.
Yeah.
So wearing blue blocking glasses, or at the very least amber glasses, because they don't distort your color vision as much, but they are effective at still maintaining some melatonin secretion. Doing that throughout the entire shift is the best investigated way to mitigate some of the harmful effects.
Nice.
The other way, because it looks like your schedule, you're doing 2 weeks doing day, 2 weeks evening, 2 weeks night, is over the course of those 6 weeks, you just slowly use bright light therapy and melatonin supplementation and blue blockers to shift your circadian rhythm. So that way you treat your work period as the daytime. And if you are during your work exposed to bright lights, that can in effect supplement the sun as far as like melatonin secretion, and then you're basically just rotating your daytime so it your biological day occurs at a different time, and you slowly move it later and later as you move through these shift schedules.
Yeah, very well explained. There's almost an interesting ethical issue that I get into when I answer this question, which is, when you tell people about the increased risk of cancer and a lot of these other diseases, it's like you worry, am I increasing the potential for a nocebo effect by telling them that this, especially if it's a job they're stuck in and they have no choice to get out, am I worsening the issue by talking to them about all these problems that could result or would result from continuing on with this? And on the other side of that, it's like, well, if I don't tell them, then maybe they wouldn't have gotten out of this job when they had the opportunity to, or wouldn't actively be looking to get out of it in the first place, because they just were not even aware that it has potential risks associated with it. And I always land on the latter option. Like, I always land on the more ethical thing to do is to tell them, to give them the knowledge of what the research says and allow them to do what they want to do with that information. Yeah. Christy, have you ever known anyone to go from very low energy and flux to an athlete? Yeah, I'm sure there are many examples of people who, maybe were sedentary for years or maybe decades, and then, decided to start running marathons and or become a triathlete or something of that nature. Do you guys have any personal stories?
Well, I was like that. Like, years ago, I would get like 3,000 steps. I worked as a hairstylist for years, so I stood in one location for 12 to 14-hour days. And then I quit that job and I started training like crazy. So, and my energy went through the roof, and now I can't, you can't talk me out of it.
Yeah, and now she's a very high energy flux. She's a small woman, so 5'4", 120 pounds, but on a good day, when because we're still we're at the tail end of moving into our new place, but when we're moved in and in like our regular habits, what would you say, how many calories would you say are required just to maintain your small weight?
2,500 to 2,700.
Yeah, and so a lot, just to I really want to bring that up, because in this program we've noticed there are many women in there. Many of you are on the smaller side, as many women are, and many of you are still working to really increase your activity levels, and that goes a long way, a really long way.
I burn 1,600 to 1,800 calories, so that's not an option for me because I like eating.
And it's not like she's doing hours of cardio on the treadmill. She literally just goes for walks. She has a treadmill desk that she walks on at a slow pace. It's just small changes like that. Nothing that would be considered even moderately intense for most people. Yeah. It's just about making it a habit.
Mm-hmm. I just want to connect the dots for people. Some people I'm sure already get this, but just to point this out, there might be other women who are the exact same size or very similar size to Brianna, who are, let's say 5'4" and 120, 130 pounds, who are consuming and burning about 1,300 or 1,400 calories a day. And the difference, and maintaining their weight, not losing weight at that level. And the difference between someone who is in that scenario versus someone who's in Brianna's scenario at 26, 2,700 calories, we're talking about nearly double the amount of flux, nearly double the amount of calories coming in and out of the system every day. And that difference is massive. You don't put on fat easily, I would imagine, Brianna. You can maintain leanness pretty effortlessly.
What are you maintaining as far as body fat?
Oh, right now, 17%.
17% is about as lean as a woman can even get to.
Yeah, I stayed at 12% for several years, effortlessly. But it's not healthy. My hormones are trashed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but the point being is when Ari was giving his webinar that many of you watched, he showed a picture of elite athletes. They don't even Michael Phelps, for example, eats 10,000 calories a day, and yet he is shredded. because his flux is through the roof. It's almost as if when you start getting into the habit of just being regularly active, fat gain is almost impossible because your appetite stays in perfect regulation with how much you're burning, and your body is more prone to partition calories towards muscle tissue rather than towards fat tissue because your muscle's always working and it's always needing energy. The body isn't stupid. And the other side of it too is that when you do decide to diet, how many of you, would love to be able to lose a pound of fat per week by eating 2,000 calories per day instead of by needing to drop down 800 calories per day? Like, just as far,
You don't even feel like moving at that point.
yeah, energy levels, the whole adherence aspect. It would be much easier to feel like you don't need to deprive yourself simply because you've made the habit of being regularly active.
Yeah. We should also mention, just for clarity, so sometimes people interpret things in a very black and white way. When we talk about flux and present elite athletes, it's a spectrum, right? We're talking about moving in the direction of that. We're not talking about you should also eat 10,000 calories a day like Michael Phelps and do 4 hours of intense exercise a day. And, he doesn't even eat good food. Like, a lot of these elite athletes are like binging on McDonald's and all kinds of junk food too, and they still don't get fat. And just for clarity, we are not advocating 10,000 calorie a day diets with lots of processed junk food. Okay. But we're pointing out that even in, that's the extreme of what high flux gets you. It creates a body that's so resistant to storing fat. It's almost impossible to store fat, even eating as much food as you can possibly consume in a day, and not even very good food. It's still almost impossible to store fat. So we're talking about moving more in the direction of that and in the benefits of that without the eating of junk food. Rebecca is asking, I think, Brianna, this is a question for you. Which hydrogen machine did you recommend?
So I bought mine probably 12 years ago, so I don't even know if it's on the market anymore. I can look into that for you, though, and post it in the group if you tag me in it. I have bought a water bottle recently, and those are like $300, and they're hydrogen water bottles. But I have a machine, and I don't know if it's on the market anymore, and I'll check.
Yeah, and there was I'm forgetting the name of the company, but there was some kind of scandal maybe 6 months or a year ago of some company that was, I forget actually the details of it, but they were kind of duping people. Do you remember this, Brianna?
I don't. I haven't heard about it.
Let me just look it up really quick. They were like duping influencers. I can't find it offhand. I remember posting about it in the group, though. It was maybe a year ago. But from what I've read, and I haven't bought a hydrogen machine myself, but from what I've read, there seems to be a lot of like mixed reports of how effective certain hydrogen machines are.
Definitely.
The parts per million of hydrogen that they actually add to the water seems to be a critical factor, and some of the machines or bottles on the market seem to not actually produce levels that are that meaningful. Yep. And I've even heard some people argue in favor of the tablets over the bottle.
Yeah, so I have a ORP meter that I tested machines, like my friends had machines back then. I'm from Oregon, so there's a lot of hippie stuff that goes on up there. And so I bought an ORP meter and I tested the one that I have, but I haven't tested the water bottle yet. I'll do that before I recommend it too, I guess.
Nice. Okay, Christine said, trying for overall fat loss, but anything to speed up waist loss. I have a huge waistline. Alex, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So this is actually perfect timing because someone else in the group just commented earlier today when I was responding to people saying that their weight, it's been 1 week. I had them increase their protein to match our recommendations. They were coming from Brightline Eating. It's been 1 week and their body weight increased by 1 pound, but they have already lost 2 inches off of their waist measurements.
Beautiful.
And I mean, really, it's the power of body recomposition. It's the power of the body starting to delegate more energy towards lean tissue so that you see your body start to tighten up. And, it is 100% possible to lose fat and gain muscle simultaneously. It does become more difficult the more muscular and athletic and like the more experience you have being active. But if you're someone who is just picking up a resistance training program or just now increasing your protein intake, you're probably going to see some sudden increases in your body weight, even though your waist measurements and other circumference measurements are going to go down. That's completely normal because your body is starting to delegate more resources towards your very dense and heavy muscle tissue. And part of that's water, part of that's contractile proteins, but all of it is exactly what you want: metabolically active tissue.
Yeah, for some personal experience, I came from a vegan diet years ago too, and I gained 15 pounds within a year of weight training and increasing my protein. And it was lean tissue. I was doing BOD-POD, like body fat assessments at that time. It was lean tissue.
Brian, let me ask you something. So just for clarity, because a lot of people here, especially women, hear something like that, gaining 15 pounds, and they are horrified at that and think, oh my gosh, I pray to God that nothing that bad ever happens to me. So my question is, after gaining those 15 pounds, did your body look better or worse?
Way better. And I wore the same size clothes. So that reassured me during the process too.
Mm-hmm. So that's what people need to wrap their heads around.
Yes.
That you can gain weight on the scale, and this is why the scale is an imperfect way of assessing what's going on with your body. You can gain weight, but if it's the good kind of weight, it can actually lead to a better looking body.
Yep.
Yeah. The one other thing I want to add to this, without digressing into a huge discussion, is the idea of spot reduction. So this concept of spot reduction is basically that you can reduce fat in a specific place on your body. So if you've got fat on your stomach, you've got fat on your butt or on your thighs or wherever your problem area is, everybody has a propensity to store fat on some particular place. For guys, it's typically like a spare tire around the lower abdomen and love handle area. And women, it can either be butt and thighs, or sometimes the abdomen as well. So there's a nuanced answer to this question, which is, technically speaking, from like an overgeneralization, spot reduction is a myth. Okay. And this is the main principle to understand, is that your body is going to pull fat wherever it pulls fat from during the process of fat loss. And the place that is the most stubborn fat, that you probably hate the most, is usually like the last place where that fat gets pulled from. So wherever your fat is located, the big picture is like focus on fat loss more broadly, doing the big picture fat loss strategies. And that's what Alex was talking about. The more nuanced potential answer is, there's some unique aspects of these stubborn fat stores that you can potentially modify in a way that leads to more fat being pulled from those areas. So for example, one interesting test, if you have a thermometer handy, you could do this right now. But if you literally like take the thermometer and measure your skin temperature, it has to be the kind that you kind of apply to any skin area of your body. And you take your temperature like anywhere on your body, and it's probably going to be in the range of like 98, 90, somewhere around there, 97 to 99-ish. And then if you take it on those stubborn fat stores, like on your lower abdomen or on your butt or your thighs or something like that, you'll probably find it's like 2 or 3 full degrees lower in those areas. And the reason why is that those areas have less blood flow. And so there's been some research indicating that the fat in those tissues are less likely to actually release their fat stores into the bloodstream by virtue of the lack of blood circulation to those tissues. So doing things which can increase the heat and the circulation in those areas in tandem with like fasted exercise, for example, in the morning, potentially could increase the amount of fat that's mobilized from those tissues, especially if you combine it with something like red light therapy or sun exposure. Then you can potentially release more fat and burn more fat from those areas than you would have otherwise in the absence of those things. So do you guys want to add anything to that?
I'll just add that I also think it's worth emphasizing that this spot reduction becomes increasingly important the leaner you become.
Yeah.
Well, to be blunt, for anyone that is currently obese, it is probably going to do very little.
Yeah.
Because you have so much stored fat for the body to pull from that there isn't a reason for the body to be like, oh, I have some extra blood flow to this area, let's go there, because it has so much other fat available to use.
Yeah.
But as you get leaner, and this will happen over time for all of you, it can be useful when you find that you are down to, you want to lose those last 5 to 10 pounds to get to where you like to look, then it can be helpful there. And it can also help minimize muscle loss when you're dieting, because one of the reasons why you lose more muscle the leaner you are is because it's basically just more difficult for the body to get energy from fat stores because there's less fat available. And so the body says, okay, well, we got to now get some energy from the protein stored in our muscle. So if you can provide it with some of that fat energy from those stubborn fat areas, then that can also not just spot reduce, but help reduce muscle loss.
Yeah, well said. Important nuance. Thanks for adding that. Valerie said, what if one doesn't have access to a sauna, or for that matter, sunlight? If you don't have access to sunlight at all, you're probably going to die really soon. Or not live very long, or not live very healthy, I should say. You definitely want to remedy that much more importantly than the sauna issue. Sunlight is massively important to your health, and you got to find a way to get at least some bit of exposure. I don't know if you're in the Southern Hemisphere right now, but we're going into summer in the Northern Hemisphere. So I would say find a way to get some sunlight, at least every other day or something. At least a few minutes, at least 3 to 5 minutes. As far as a sauna, a couple options. You can potentially join some kind of local gym or community center that might have a sauna. Probably closed right now due to COVID, but hopefully will open up soon. And then other than that, if you live in a hot place, then you can potentially exercise outdoors in hot temperatures. Maybe hot baths will replicate some of the effects of saunas, but those are my general thoughts for that one. Paula, for intermittent fasting, is it okay to switch between starting in the morning and starting midday? I feel like you said something about our body preferring the same eating schedule. Alex, do you want to take this?
Yeah. So the body learns what. Like one of the idea behind peripheral clocks in the body is that they're set by our food intake. So the body learns when it's going to expect food. And so it kind of sets up the right hormonal environment for when you're about to eat, so that it can handle the incoming nutrients appropriately. One of the most consistent detriments to health as far as like meal timing goes is that you just eat randomly and sporadically throughout the day. There is no consistent pattern. So I would say, generally speaking, it's going to be better if you start your intermittent fasting in the morning and end it earlier in the evening. But I think it's going to be best if you just look at your overall schedule. You decide if it's going to be more convenient for you to start in the morning or midday based on what's going to occur most often in your schedule, and then stick with it. Okay, so Danielle says, in regards to the consumption of fat and carbs and focusing on one at each meal, then the other at the next meal, is there more details for what ratio quantity is okay of each? It's mentioned with carbs that you can limit it to 15 grams of fat, but is that total in an entire meal or added fat? Yeah, so this concept is definitely on my list to go back and update, because I realized that this is an area of a lot of confusion thanks to the feedback from the Facebook. First of all, I want to emphasize that first and foremost, the number one reason why we want to get into the habit of separating carbohydrates and fats is because when your goal is weight loss, you want to become satiated more quickly. And when you have fat and carb combinations, they are delicious. And so, I mean, you know, they're fine to have every once in a while. Like, you don't want to completely neglect yourself if it works for you. You don't want to completely neglect yourself of them, and they're fine to have every once in a while. The goal is to make it a habit of not doing that, because that way you'll be less discouraged to you'll basically just not overeat as much. That's the number one reason. The second reason is far more theoretical, and it's something I stumbled across, I think, in 2015 when I was writing about buttered potatoes. And that is basically that the combination causes a temporary state of insulin resistance in the body that mimics type 2 diabetes, because the fat from the ingested meal interferes with the body's ability to utilize the glucose. And the glucose interferes with the body's ability to utilize the fat. And so you end up with a bunch of fat and glucose and insulin in your bloodstream that stays elevated longer than it should, because the body's not able to use each nutrient as good as it should. This can also have impacts on energy levels, because your muscle tissue is not going to be getting the energy it needs after you eat. You might be more tired than usual. It can also suppress orexin in the brain, which is a very potent neuropeptide that promotes energy levels. But that latter reason is more theoretical. The number one reason is because you want to minimize your risk of overeating. So the reason I give the 15-gram limit for fat when you're eating a starchy carbohydrate meal is because in the literature, when you eat a high carbohydrate meal, 15 grams of fat seems to be the limit before those metabolic abnormalities occur. And that
Eat mine at like 10 grams just to have a little wiggle room in there, because there's errors.
Yeah, and so that's any type of fat in the meal, not just added oils. It's if you're eating a fatty cut of meat, that could very well be all the fat or more that you get in that meal. Now, on the flip side, when you're eating and I'll also add that in these unsaturated fats tend to be much more welcoming than saturated fats. So, for example, if you have the choice between olive oil and butter, then you would want to go with a little olive oil, because it's going to be better metabolically than the saturated fat
Starchy meals.
in those meals. Now, on the flip side, when you're eating a high fat meal, then you tend to want to limit your carbohydrates to just being fibrous vegetables, because fibrous vegetables like leafy greens, cruciferous, like cauliflower, broccoli, asparagus, any of those, mushrooms, bulbs like onions and garlic, any of those things, when those are tested with this metabolic dysfunction concept in mind, because they are broken down so slowly and they have so much fiber, it doesn't matter how much you eat, they just don't have that same effect. So you can like eat 50 grams of carbohydrates from pure fibrous vegetables and you're fine. So that's why I say unlimited fibrous vegetables if you're going to have a high fat meal.
There's a lot of questions on fruit, though, in the group about this concept, too. And the reason why I say some fruits are okay is because we give them such a small amount and they have fructose in them, so they don't cause the same insulin response as well.
Exactly. They don't stimulate insulin as much. They're usually more fibrous, especially things like berries or small apples. They just aren't as carbohydrate dense as, say, rice or grains. So the big thing is limiting your intake of starches, starchy tubers like potatoes and sweet potatoes, and limiting your intake of any form of grain when you're eating a high-fat meal. But if you want to have some fruit, that's fine. And if you want to have fibrous vegetables, then, of course, eat as much as you want of those.
Okay. That was Danielle's question.
Yeah.
Carbs. Okay. Angela, I understand that consistent meal times are important for the peripheral circadian clocks, and I'm wondering if skipping breakfast a couple times a week for the caloric deficit would negatively impact my circadian rhythm. Which would you choose for better fat loss? So this is an interesting question. As far as I am aware, there is no clear science to answer this. So we have science testing each of these things individually, but not sort of comparing them. And there's benefits to both of them. So meaning consistent meal times is important, and then also potentially doing some kind of intermittent fasting where necessarily you would not have your normal consistent meal times is also beneficial. So to some extent, these things are mutually exclusive, but basically just get over the cognitive dissonance of that and just feel free to incorporate both of them into your lifestyle. That would be my answer. So consistent meal times when on the days that you eat whatever your normal, 3-4 meals a day that you normally would have. And then feel free to also experiment with a day or two per week where you deviate from that and you fast all day, or you have one meal a day, or something to that effect. Do you guys agree with me, or do you have anything to add to that?
No, I completely agree. I'll just expand and say stick to your other meal times. So if you skip breakfast, for example, your body was preparing for you to eat, but then it's going to go, wait a second, nothing's happening right here. I'm not quite sure what's going on, but it's like temptation will go up here and then it'll start to go back to baseline because it's like, okay, nothing happened. But then once lunch comes around, it's going to start doing that again. It's going to be expecting. So don't like skip breakfast and then eat your meals at different times than you normally do. Skip breakfast, but then eat lunch like you would normally because your body's still expecting that to happen. And you can partially maintain that circadian entrainment by doing that.
Yeah. Karen said, how much red light before and after, I assume exercise? Okay, so there's a real long answer and there's a short answer. The real long answer has to do with, choosing your devices, how far away from the device you are, and so on, how powerful the device is and how far away you are from it, and how long you do it all determine the dose that you're actually getting. And so the time, when you're asking how long should I do it for, depends on what specific device, how powerful the device is, how far away you are from it. Having said that, the simple version of the answer is if you get one of the lights I recommend, which I'm recommending those because they're actually third-party tested and we have good data showing the true power output of them, and they're reputable brands. So get one of those devices. And then once you do that, the simple answer is use it for about 6 inches away from the areas that you're treating, and use it for somewhere in the range of, you can start around 5 minutes, but you can work your way up to about 20 minutes or 25 minutes of total time. So if you're doing that before and after your training session, then you might do 10 minutes before, 10 minutes after. Okay. Charla, how can I take advantage of living in Arizona for hormesis and using the natural heat in the summer? Well, Brianna and Alex just moved there, so they can tell you all about it.
Well, I would say that if you wanted to use it for a hormetic effect, then don't cool your house down during the day. Live in that heat like you are outside. Really build up that heat stress during the day. It's not going to be extreme heat stress. You're not sitting in a sauna unless you're like locking yourself inside your car parked under the sun. It's only going to be yes, it can get to over 100, but it's not high enough to where the amount of time needs to be so low. Like when you're in a sauna, it's for 30 to 60 minutes. This temperature is like 60% of a sauna temperature. And so you only really need to be like, you can be in there for hours and hours, basically throughout the day. And then go into your house or set your temperature on your house down so that it starts to cool, so that you go from this heat stress down to a cooler temperature. And that cooling effect will actually also help you sleep at night. But that would be the gist of it, is you would really just need to stop using your air conditioner during the summer.
I think definitely morning sun. I think going out and getting in the sun in the morning too.
Well, yeah, you have no excuse to not be in the sun living in Arizona. It's there all the time.
Well, that's the irony. And I don't know if you guys probably know this, but a lot of the places that are the most sunny vitamin D deficiency is still rampant because people spend all day indoors avoiding the heat and the sun because it's too intense for them. So you end up with people who live in the sunniest places who don't get any freaking sun.
Yeah, we walk in the morning, like early, like 6 a.m., just so we're not like overheating.
Yeah, but the sun is already raised up enough where it's like 45 degrees in the air at 6 to 7 in the morning. And so she'll usually go out in like a sports bra or something that has skin exposure. I'll just take my shirt off and then we'll go for like an hour walk in the morning and really just soak it up because unfortunately, you know, we do need to work. I need to be there to answer your questions on Facebook. And so we do have to be inside for a good portion of the day. So it's trying to work in that sun whenever you can.
Nice. Catherine, if carbs and fats are separate pieces of a meal, can they be eaten together? For example, fat only in a protein shake, carbs on the salad. So hyperpalatability, not so much an issue, especially when plated. Alex, this is you.
Yeah, so just playing off what I did earlier, if it doesn't cause you to overeat, then I don't see an issue with it. But you're still going to have that theoretical transient state of insulin resistance and reduced energy availability to the body and possibly enhanced fatigue. The reason I keep saying it's theoretical is because there aren't any we have intervention studies, randomized clinical trials in people showing that when you give them fatty carbohydrate meals, they overeat more than either low fat or low carb meals. We don't have those interventions like long-term interventions in people showing that, hey, if you have two groups of people, one of them eats all their meals as mixed meals, the other eats all their meals as separate, like either high carb or high fat meals, but calories are the same. That study doesn't exist. So we can't say if it's going to actually worsen your metabolic health over time. The biological mechanism is there, and you have some support from things like the Western diet, which is basically the poster child for poor metabolic health. But
there's studies on diabetic patients, you can pull from that too, but there's nothing that's been actually studied.
Yeah, so I keep saying it's theoretical because I can't tell you that that's actually how it would work. A future study could disprove me. I'm just telling you that the biological mechanism is there. So, you know, most of your meals, you want to favor one nutrient over the other. In theory. But yeah.
Chelsea said, I'm aiming for the 1.5 gram of protein per kilogram of body weight. And holy, that's a lot of food. I'm struggling a bit with getting it all in, and I have some anxiety about the volume, even though I'm very active. Words to ease my concern. And would you recommend a day or two of light eating per week? Like maybe not hitting the protein target on 1 or 2 days on less active days. Alex, this is up your alley again.
Yeah. So what I would say is it's a goal. Don't stress about getting there, but try your hardest to get there. Eat protein first in the meal to make sure that you get there when possible. But here's the thing. You're saying it's a lot of food and your goal is weight loss. Like, that's what we want.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that satiety. Eat all that protein first in the meal and then walk away and just be like, oh my gosh, I can't eat another bite. And you probably only had like a couple hundred calories at that meal, and yet you are stuffed. That's where you want to be for fat loss. And as you lose fat, your appetite will start to pick back up because you're going to become more sensitized to the effects of leptin, and your body's going to be like, no, wait, I want a little more protein or a little more food, because your body's going to start operating in a more healthy way, and your appetite will be better matched to your diet and your activity levels.
Yeah. This is, I mean, just to add to that, this is the magic of, like, you want to be in a place where you are losing fat and also thinking, geez, how do I eat all this food? It's so much food. I'm so full. I can hardly eat this much food, right? The reason that, you know, most weight loss approaches are not sustainable is because you're depriving yourself of food and you're hungry, and you're forcibly depriving yourself of food and suffering through hunger. That's where things become unsustainable. If you're in the opposite scenario of like, geez, how do I eat all this food? I'm struggling to consume all this. And you're losing fat while eating a diet that makes you think that or feel that, that's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of women too, we come from eating very small portions, and so we're not used to eating an adequate amount of food. And that goes with anything that has more volume, like lean proteins and vegetables. Like you just have to get used to that. And as you get leaner, like you said, your leptin will drop off, and then you'll get hungrier.
I'm gonna give this back to Brianna too, but what comes to mind is something that Brianna jokes about, which is a veggie belly. And I think this is a really important point to touch on with women too, because women just have this idea in their head that they want to have a flat stomach. And that can make it really hard to adopt the habits that are actually going to get them very lean, because a lot of, and to have a flat stomach, because a lot of these foods like fibrous vegetables are very voluminous and they're going to fill you up. They're going to give you what Brianna calls a veggie belly, where you might have like some push out because your stomach is full of nice, yummy fibrous vegetables and high volume foods that keep your appetite low. And so, I mean, it's a give and take, because you have to acknowledge that if you want to get that actual lean stomach, you're going to have to deal with a little, higher volume foods that are going to keep your appetite down and allow you to make that weight loss effortless. And you also just have to accept that, you might wake up with that lean stomach in the morning, but as you move through the day, your stomachs and your intestinal tract slowly going to get filled up with some more and more food. And so
a way that I circumvent that too is I eat my high fat meal in the morning because I like feeling lean during the day. And then I'll eat my big salad like at my lunchtime and my dinner time. And then I go to bed with a veggie belly and wake up with a flat stomach.
Nice. Okay, one from Christine. She's asking a long question. I was reading it while you guys were answering there, so I'm going to summarize. She's asking about vibration platforms. And basically the main question is, would it be better to use the vibration platform all in one session or multiple sessions throughout the day? And my answer would be multiple sessions throughout the day. And the reason why is there's actually research, believe it or not, showing that even a period of like 2 hours of sitting and not moving your body can actually induce measurable states of insulin resistance just from not moving. Okay. So, and there's many other lines of research here in my brother's Pain Fix protocol. So he talks a lot about movement from the neurological perspective and what it's doing to your brain and your brain's proprioception and nociception, the perception of pain. And movement is essential, basically. Like gentle movement throughout the day is essential for normal function of your cells. So if the question is like, should I do 45 minutes of whatever activity or whatever form of movement all at one time, or should I do 5 minutes 9 times a day? Okay, and the answer is 5 minutes 9 times a day is better in this case. When we're talking about gentle movement or NEAT. Now, if you're talking about like doing a specific high intensity interval training session or a weight training session, you probably want to condense that all into one session. But in general, if you can intersperse the gentle movement, break up periods of being sedentary, of not moving, with even a minute or 2 or 5 minutes of some kind of movement and muscle activation, that is ideal. Diane, definitely need more info on macros, increasing protein and feeling like I'm force feeding. Concerned I'm consuming too much fat, but can't tell. What should my calorie intake be total? Alex?
I can't tell you that. A lot of people in the group have been asking, how many calories should I eat? And I have no idea. Everyone, even if they are equivalent in size, are going to have vastly different calorie intakes because of the food choices they make. Some foods are less digestible than others, and their energy expenditure is obviously going to increase how much you burn. So, I mean, with what you told me right here, I can't tell you how much to eat. And even if I could, it would only be an estimation. If you really do want to track your calories, then what I recommend doing is tracking your calories for a couple weeks. And if your weight has been stable during that time, then whatever you're currently eating is roughly your maintenance. And so you can make adjustments from that. Don't make adjustments based on some estimation. Actually see where you're at right now and then make adjustments from there, right? You need to know where point A is if you ever want to draw a map from point A to point B.
Right. And just to make this more tangible, we gave the example previously of Brianna and someone who is equivalently sized, who might be on eating 1,300, 1,400 calories a day, and Brianna is at 2,600, 2,700 calories a day. So if you comment here and say, hey, I'm 5'5" and 135 pounds, how many calories should I eat per day? The answer is, as Alex said, we don't know because there's other factors at play. And the way you figure it out is exactly what Alex just described. And then once you get that baseline from tracking your intake, then you can adjust from there.
I will also add that I really want to emphasize because once again, Diane, you said that increasing protein and you feel like you're force feeding. I really want to emphasize that for many people who have that feeling, don't track. Like, it's as simple as make your only goal hitting that daily protein quota and work towards it every day, and eat your protein first in a meal, followed by your fibrous vegetables, and then whatever else you want if you're still hungry. But ride that satiety train all the way to fat lossville. Like, just don't even worry about calories. Just take advantage of the fact that you're getting full at your meals now, and you're probably doing it on very few calories.
Yeah. And just to be clear, thank you for mentioning that. We're not saying that everyone should track calories. So, when we answer questions like this, don't be starting to think, oh, they're telling me, I need to track my calories and maintain some calorie deficit. You can lose fat without tracking calories. To be honest with you, I've only tracked calories in my entire life, probably for like a period of 3 or 4 weeks. And then I got sick of it and I found it super annoying. And other than that period of a month, I've never tracked calories in my life. And you can absolutely, once you get a feel for your body, what level of food intake kind of leads to weight maintenance and what you need to do, how you need to modify things in order to lose fat. Like, you can do it all in a much more intuitive way, or just by counting protein, for example, without needing to count every morsel of food and calculate the calories and so on, let alone forcibly deprive yourself of calories. Laurel said, what do you think of blood flow restrictive training? I've been using it 3 times a week while doing resistance exercise. I use the Katsu 2.0 cycle equipment. Is this in alignment with your exercise program? My intention is slight fat loss and maintaining strength and muscle mass. My simple short answer is, if you enjoy it, yeah, it's absolutely fine to do it. I have no problem with it. Alex, do you want to add anything on that, or Brianna?
I'm in line with you. I think that it's especially great for individuals that are having joint problems where they have trouble lifting heavier weights, because when you do blood flow restricted training, you're only lifting like 30% of your 1 repetition maximum, whereas most standard training protocols put you more so around 75%. And so that can be a huge load taken off of your joint tissue. Even though you're going to, because of the enhanced metabolic state, you're going to be getting a similar training stimulus.
Yeah. And, as we mentioned this in a recent Q&A too, it sounds like if you're only using 30% of your 1 rep max as opposed to around 70%, it would be a lot easier and less painful. The reality is blood flow restriction training also has its own unique kind of pain and intensity associated with the buildup of lactic acid and the burning sensation and so on. Georgia, so don't think that just because you're using a lightweight that it's going to be easy and painless. Georgia, what fiber products do you recommend, and what do you think of PGX Granless? I don't know what PGX Granless is.
PGX is great. It has tons of research behind it.
What is it?
It's glucomannan.
Oh, glucomannan. Okay,
yeah,
got it.
Yeah, but that's the trade name or whatever that they sell it in the stores.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it.
It's one of the few fibers that actually has clinical research on it.
Alex, I'm going to have to ask you to back up off the mic when Brianna's talking. No, I'm just kidding.
I love it. It's also the Miracle noodles are made from the same type of fiber. And that's what I recommend for you guys that are on like 1,400 calories and stuff to fill yourself up.
Yeah. Other types of fibers that are great is beta glucan, which you can get a clinically effective dose of beta glucan from just one serving of oatmeal per day. And that's actually the basis why you'll see like Quaker Oats carrying around that heart healthy certification from the FDA. So beta glucan is great. Mushrooms and oats and barley are full of it. Another really good one is going to be guar and xanthan gums, which many of you can use to like thicken protein shakes. And those are incredibly beneficial for the microbiome as far as their fermentability goes. Resistant starch is great, and you can get that by simply letting any starches that you cook, like rice or potatoes, just let it cool overnight in the fridge before you eat it. To give you an example of this effect, if you take a large potato and you cook it and then eat it, you're getting about 3 grams of fiber. If you take that same potato, just stick it in the fridge overnight and then eat it the next day, you're getting 20 grams of fiber from the exact same potato. And that's a lot less calories as well. So, I mean, there are some really easy ways to get solid beneficial fiber from foods. But just eat a diversity of plant foods, really, and you'll be good to go.
Yeah. I will add one little unique thing that kind of fiber that I started supplementing with recently, just a couple months ago, larch tree fiber, which has arabinogalactan. Is it arabino? I think it's arabinogalactan. And that has really beneficial properties as far as immune function. And there's some really impressive research specifically showing how it can help decrease the incidence and severity of upper respiratory tract infections. So for obvious reasons, what's going on right now, that's something I've been supplementing with lately.
I just learned that we have some in the cupboard.
I'm a fiber junkie.
Nice. Kelly said, any suggestion on a specific whole body vibration platform? Like Christina, I have a spinal issue that affects my ability to increase NEAT. My parents have one, but it's $2,000 and I don't know how to pick one up at a lower price point. I'm sure you can find one used somewhere if you keep an eye on Craigslist. So that might be an option. There might be, $2,000 is really expensive. There's definitely like really, really good ones that you could get for probably $500. There's for anybody recovering from injuries, especially spinal cord injuries, and has you have a decreased ability to move your body and do exercise and do NEAT. This, I think, a vibration platform is a wonderful, wonderful tool. On fat loss, it's interesting because I've seen some research showing benefits, and then I also heard Alex answer somebody's question on this recently in a Q&A, and he said it's worthless. So maybe Alex knows something that I don't, as far as seeing some research that has sort of debunked the earlier research. But I've definitely seen at least 2, if not 3, articles on Supversity showing significant benefits as far as visceral fat loss and things of that nature were amplified by using the vibration platform as well.
Yeah, I guess my comment probably wasn't appropriate in the sense that a lot of people are always looking for like the next thing to enhance their progress. And, when we're talking about like vibration, we're people going to be spending a couple $1,000s on products like these. I just think, look, yes, some studies show it could benefit you, definitely, but let's focus on the low hanging fruit. For sure. You're in this program. Let's focus on these lifestyle changes, these diet changes, because ultimately, compared to those, that vibration plate's not going to do anything. It's not going to replace that bad diet. I should have said, depending on your financial ability, it could assist and everything.
100%. I agree with you. And I'm not pushing vibration plates. I don't sell them or anything like that. I've never made money on the sale of any vibration plate. So I have no vested interest here. I think to quantify it, to maybe reframe what Alex is saying there, and I think we both agree on this. If you were going to say like the big picture of all the things necessary to drive fat loss, like what percentage of those effects would come from a vibration platform, as that being one of your strategies? Probably less than 5%, maybe less than like 3% is going to be attributable to the effects of the unique benefits of the use of a vibration platform. So I agree with Alex. This is not like the magic thing that's going to drive lots of fat loss, but is as one additional sort of supplementary thing layered into all the foundational strategies taught in this program. Would it have some at least small additional benefit? Yeah, there is research to support that. And then in the context, again, of somebody who's injured, who's unable to move a lot, I do think getting that passive movement from a vibration platform is a really great idea. Lori, grateful to be here. We're grateful to have you here. Question: in the promo email, it included that there would be no calorie counting or counting carbs, yet I'm seeing that we are looking at BMR and calorie deficits, and we're also counting our protein intake, which leads me to believe we will be tracking carbs and fat too. Could you talk about this? Okay, we'll stop there and answer the question because there's a bunch after. Alex, do you want to take that?
Well, I think it goes right into what we had mentioned previously. No, you don't need to count calories or track anything to be successful with what we've laid out in this program. But we do encourage you to be more mindful of what you're putting in your mouth. And part of that is obtaining a sufficient amount of protein. Many of you have realized that you are not even eating 50% of the protein that is recommended to optimize your body composition. And in circumstances like that, tracking just your protein, just so you start getting in the habit of eating that much protein regularly, is important. Is it a lifelong thing? No. And at no point do you need to care about your carbohydrate, fat, or calorie intake while doing that. It's just a transitional stepping stone towards building a lifelong fat loss habit.
Yeah, well said. And by the way, if you find out that you're eating only 50% of the optimal amount of protein, I mean, that's great news, because that's like a super easy, low-hanging fruit, as Alex said, to really start optimizing your body composition through something that's really easy and pretty darn painless. So, and may actually even be enjoyable. Okay, then let's see if there's another question here. Okay, Lori, if there's another part of the question that we didn't just answer, please rephrase it again. But I'm going to move on from that one because it looks like just sort of more detail, like context of trying to help us answer that question. Rebecca, Brianna, as the skin expert, do you recommend anything for aged skin, dark spots, and skin barnacles?
Yeah, the only thing that's been proven to work for age spots is topical vitamin C. And I mean, I can throw out some brand names of those. The salon that I had, we sold Dermalogica. They have a vitamin C powder that you press into the skin, and that should help. What was the other?
Skin barnacles.
Oh, yep. I have no idea what that is. So
I don't either.
But as far as
some kind of crusties on the skin.
Yeah, as far as age spots, that's pretty easy to take care of with like a Chroma White vitamin C powder.
Nice. Alyssa, I was hoping you could give me a recommendation or something regarding a sleep problem that I have that's affecting my success with your program. I've been getting night sweats that wake me up hourly. It's been happening for 10 years since I was 29, and no doctor has been able to help. I'm getting desperate. Is there a specialist you'd recommend? Okay. Yeah, this is a tricky one. There's several potential causes of this. Could be something as sort of exotic as like a chronic stealth infection of, Borrelia or Lyme or something of that nature. Or it could be something that's fixed. It could be something that's hormonal, or it could be something that's fixable just through like modifying your materials that you're sleeping on, or getting something like a chili pad. Brianna, I feel like you probably would have some insights into this one.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is hormonal. It could definitely be an infection too. But I would get a hormone panel from your doctor and see where you're at, because you could have too high of estrogen, or let's look at that. And I recommend a chili pad too. So they're great, and it'll help with symptom management right now while you figure out the other problems.
Nice.
I kind of want to pitch something, just a question for my own knowledge on this towards Brianna, and that's how would you figure the potential for poor glucose management into this, and if she's running hypoglycemic through the night?
Yeah, that definitely could cause it too. I need more information to know like what your issues are. So I'm just guessing like here. But if you get an adrenaline rush at night or anything, that'll cause you to break out in night sweats too, just like nightmares do. And that usually is caused from low blood glucose too. And I don't know what your diet looks like, so I can't really say if that is probable or not.
Mm-hmm. Alex, do you normally talk to Brianna through the microphone when you guys are just hanging out alone at home?
No, but I think of ideas on these Q&As. I think of ideas and that I want her to speak to. And so I tried to phrase it as a question for her.
Nice. I like it. I just couldn't resist. It was so interesting to see you guys standing right next to each other, holding a mic, staring at her while talking to her in the mic.
Yeah, I know.
Christine said, Life Pro has a platform that is less than $200 from Amazon. Works great. Doing others works great. Doing Ari's brother's pain fix protocol for spine issues. Awesome. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. I think you can definitely find good ones for under 500, maybe under 200. There's a number of them that I've seen even like $70 and stuff like that. The question is, when you get down to those really cheapy ones, are they really high quality? And, are they going to break after a period of time? Or there might be concerns around the strength and the intensity of the frequency of the vibrations themselves and things of that nature. Might be a good question for my brother if you're in that program, because he knows, much more about that, the vibration platforms in the context of rehabilitation of, for example, spinal injuries. Christine, Brianna looks amazing. How much protein in grams does Brianna focus on to maintain her svelteness? What, me and Alex get no love? It's all about Brianna?
I eat 180 grams a day. I've played around with protein for so many years that I just do not feel well when I drop it. I had a recent experiment where I dropped all protein really low when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I felt like crap again. And then I increased it as I learned more, because I wanted to educate myself on the role of protein in cancer before I was like eating 180 grams. I just feel well, like mentally, physically, everything when I'm on a higher protein diet. My blood sugar is stable and my moods are stable and my body looks
Brandon,
good.
Since you mentioned that, do you want to talk a little bit about, I'm sure most people are hearing that you were diagnosed with cancer for the first time. So do you want to talk about, kind of any context around that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with cancer after a divorce, and I think it was mostly just an emotional trauma in my life that suppressed my immune function. And it was just a bump that popped up on my leg. It was melanoma. It's managed now. I've done a lot of like holistic like healing, and I'm pretty good now.
It was some really rare, wasn't it some really rare kind of melanoma?
Yeah, it's a childhood melanoma.
Yeah.
It was spitzoid. So it was completely random. It did not look like melanoma at all. So it was very strange. And
yeah. And it normally happens in kids. That's very odd.
And I had no genetic mutation. So it was completely like lifestyle related. It was a somatic mutation. So that's why I came to the conclusion that it was, because it popped up right after my divorce. So I came to the conclusion it was an emotional stressor that just suppressed immune function, because melanoma is treated with immunotherapy. And so it's heavily immune regulated.
Yeah. Okay. Sandra said, what do you think of Level Thrive vitamins and shakes. I take that for energy. I remember somebody asked me about this maybe 6 months or a year ago, and I remember looking at it briefly and not being particularly impressed by it. But are you familiar with it?
I pulled it up actually while Brianna was talking, and there's 4 different ones. I'm going to assume you're taking the one that's designed for women. It's basically just like a really bad multivitamin with an incredibly minor amount of a bunch of compounds where the doses are so low that you're not going to do anything. Some of these compounds are actually in a superfood supplement that Ari will be releasing sometime in the future.
They're bottling it next week, so it should
good.
be available for sale.
Yeah,
2 weeks, 3 weeks from now at the latest.
That thing is, I helped Ari formulate that, and it's going to be a mandatory part of your cupboard space because the thing
That's actually what I was just drinking.
How's it taste?
It tastes great actually.
Can you taste
It's
the
amazing that it actually tastes good with all those nasty tasting ingredients and like actual real doses. It's quite nice. And so I have the sort of test batches of it that we've run through. We've done a few different flavors, and I have my own supply. It's really good stuff. I love it.
Good. I'm excited.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you guys for helping me formulate that, by the way. Okay. Ellen's asking, what's the best way to track how many calories you're burning? That would be the answer Alex gave earlier, just as far as tracking your calories, how many you're consuming when you're in a weight stable state. So once you get that, if you're weight stable and you can track your calorie intake, then you can basically assume you're burning off about that same amount. Alex, do you want to add anything to that?
Nope, I think you nailed it. Just see where you're at currently, because if your weight's staying pretty stable with minor fluctuations, then you know that regardless of whatever any calculator tells you, what you're doing right now is what you need to maintain weight.
Okay. Christine, is it better to calculate protein intake based on your goal weight or current weight? Is there a conversion table from kilograms to pounds? Alex?
So, ideally you would base your protein intake off of your lean body mass. But the majority of research actually doesn't do that because it's a lot more complicated to assess someone's body composition accurately. So all of my recommendations are based on body weight for convenience to convey the research to all of you. I uploaded a little picture to the group files of the Facebook group that should give you body weight ranging from 100 to 300 pounds with the equivalent in kilograms, and then also your goal protein for different amounts of protein, 1.2, 1.5, and 2 grams per kilogram. So that you and its current weight. It's not goal weight. All of the calculations are based on when somebody started a diet, how much protein were they eating relative to their beginning body weight. So
nice. Rebecca said, small house, so no room for a sauna. Thoughts on getting a biomat or portable, inexpensive sauna? So with a biomat, I don't think you're going to get quite the same benefits of a sauna as far as really heating up the body and getting any sort of heat hormesis. You can get some increased circulation, maybe a bit of sweating. As far as the portable, inexpensive saunas, that category of, that products that could be classified as that, I would say 90% of them are just junk and should be avoided. There might be a few good ones, but I've generally just been disinclined to the whole category of the portable ones. Something that works really well if you don't have a lot of room in your house is the Sunlight and Solo sauna. And so that's a really good option. It can fit like under a bed or in the closet and be stored there. And then you can take it out and use it really easily. So I would look into that. Jeannie, already losing a little fat, however, increased constipation. This will regulate itself, right? There could be a few different potential causes. There's like potentially some easy solutions. And I'm sure Brianna and Alex probably have their versions, but I would say you can experiment with using things like magnesium citrate, with vitamin C, with water, with chia seeds in it. And, to get that gel-like substance, and just drinking a couple glasses or two of the gelled out chia seeds in water. Those can be very effective, but do you guys want to suggest anything for constipation?
Yeah, that usually women have more issues here. When you increase protein, this happens a lot. It does go away, and you just need to eat a lot of vegetables. And Cascara is one thing that I like to use like temporarily here and there. So you can pick that up on Amazon or
Cascara Sagrada.
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So for people, I'll type that in. Can I type? There we go. Cascara.
And drink water. I'll just emphasize that one. Like, drink water. You need to have water in your intestinal tract for things to move through it. And that's one of the ways like magnesium citrate works, is because it pulls water into the intestinal tract. So just drink plenty of fluids, especially if you're increasing your protein intake, because protein, I don't know, I would be interested if any of you want to comment on this. When you've increased your protein intake, have you noticed greater thirst? Because that's really common when you eat a lot of protein, is to have more thirst. And that's because two things. One of them is that protein uses a lot of water to be metabolized within the liver. And the other thing is that the body is more keen on getting rid of the protein byproducts. So it wants you to start peeing more to get them out of your bloodstream when you metabolize the protein. And so you have a greater thirst when you drink more protein, but that's going to pull water away from digestion.
Mm-hmm. Bran, I was scrolling through the comments and I saw a funny one for you, or not for you, just a comment on you. 12% body fat and $300 water bottles. Brianna might be inspirational to some, but could we have a relatable female example, please? Look, just the same with Michael Phelps thing, the same with some of the athletes that I'm citing. Look, I've been at 7% body fat, I mean, if you do a Google image search for me, you could find some images of me when I was like at my leanest and ripped. And I don't think this needs to be a negative thing to say somebody who has achieved, sort of a pinnacle of leanness. I've also been overweight, and genetically, I'm actually prone to obesity. And as a kid, I was overweight. And so having lifestyle and nutrition habits that lead to, extreme degrees of leanness, and knowing that territory and how to achieve that is only a beneficial thing. As far as $300 water bottles, look, I've spent God knows how many tens of thousands of dollars on all kinds of wacky stuff, a lot of which has not even had any benefits. So
yeah. Well, let me explain. I've been overweight too. And I just have an obsessive personality. That's just me. I was diagnosed with MS at 19. So that's when my pursuit of health started. And no amount of money mattered to restore my health. And so that's what, I completely understand. I've been poor too. So I understand I've been on every side of the spectrum. And I maintain around 17% because that's healthy for me right now. I don't have any desire to get that lean again. So
yeah. Excellent. Laurel said, is the Facebook group up and running? Yes, it is. You can email support@theenergyblueprint.com if you're unable to find it, or just go to Facebook and look for Fat Loss Blueprint, and you should see something Fat Loss Blueprint private members group. I have my parents here for dinner, so I'm going to take off in like 15 minutes. I'm going to sort of scroll through and see if there's some questions that are more unique to me. But otherwise, as you guys have already seen, Alex and Brianna are amazingly capable at answering everything. Jessica said, is there a difference between the light box mentioned in the circadian rhythm lesson and one of the red light devices suggested in Ari's red light book? Yes. So circadian rhythm primarily revolves around blue wavelengths of light. And the red light devices are obviously red light. So they work through different mechanisms. Without getting into the very detailed long answer, red and near infrared light penetrate through your skin into your cells, where they work their magic, and through various mechanisms, through hormetic mechanisms, through modulating growth factors and things that help the healing of tissues, as well as mitochondrial energy production. Whereas the white light or blue light devices are primarily meant to have that light enter your eyes and feed back into the circadian clock in your brain. So two totally different devices that work through totally different mechanisms. Let's see. Let me just scroll through here briefly. Alex, do you want to take something? You look like you're ready.
Well, I want you to be here for this one, but Diane asks, what food plan do you recommend for us bright line eaters? And I think that this is a good one to touch on because it would really help bridge the gap. I know that I made a post the other day on the topic of protein because many of you are very diligent with your bright line eating plan, and it's a great plan for overcoming food addictions and establishing healthier relationships with food. But it also needs to be acknowledged that it is not geared towards optimizing body composition. And so if your goal is, if you have, been successful on that program, you have a healthier relationship with food, then it's time to do a little give and take with this program, the Fat Loss Blueprint, because this is the one now where you get to change your focus from food addiction towards body composition. And there's actually quite a lot of overlap between the programs. In this program, we don't recommend snacking either. We recommend that you have strict meals, 2 to 4 meals per day, depending on preference, eaten within a 6 to 10 hour time restricted eating window. The lineup is identical. Outside of that, there are some similarities as in the sense that we recommend a hedonic reset for anyone that's struggling. That's basically what Brightline Eating is heavily focused on, is getting all your taste buds set back to where they should be. There might be small differences, but again, those differences come about because we have entirely different goals, and there's going to need to be some give and take between our programs. And that's where I
wouldn't say entirely different goals, but
not entirely different goals, but nuanced enough to where you need to acknowledge that you might need to make some changes, but you need to be respectful of yourself and you need to experiment with those changes, because not every change is going to work with every person. I've had a lot of great feedback from people saying that protein powders, for example, do not stimulate the reward pathways, nor do they do that in the scientific literature. And that people have been having a lot of success incorporating them into their otherwise Brightline eating plan. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. But you're never going to know until you try. And so that's where, it's like, give it a shot, because you can always just go back and stop doing it if it ends up not working out.
Yeah, and if something triggers you, like, I'll buy something, and if I can't have it in the house, I just throw it away. Like, the sunk cost fallacy. You don't have to eat it all. Like, you can just throw I know that sounds horrible, but if it triggers that like crazy response in your brain where you just want it all, I get those too around certain foods. So I understand. I just throw it away.
Yeah.
So, you've already bought it. So, I mean, there's no added cost from disposing of it.
So as far as the bigger picture of Brightline Eating, what plan should I be on? What do I do with the strategies in this program? If I'm already on the Brightline Eating program. So Brightline Eating, first of all, is a nutrition program, and only part of this program is about nutrition. So one approach, I'm going to tell you sort of a couple different options of approaches you could take if you're coming from BLE. One approach is to say, the BLE program, exactly as it's outlined, is my nutrition plan. I'm not going to touch it. This is exactly what I'm going to do. And then what you're doing with this program is you're adding a lot of these non-nutritional factors to your routine. Okay, so this program is, BLE is your nutrition. This program is everything else. Okay, and so then you can just feel free to, if that's what you want to do, you can feel free to ignore any nutritional advice this program is giving you, and just say, I'm BLE. BLE is my thing. That's what I'm doing exactly as it's outlined. Okay. And I'm not going to mess with it. Fine. Totally fine if you want to do that. Alternatively, you can start to see some of the things that we're teaching in this program from the nutrition perspective. For example, maybe shifting your feeding window, making that tighter, experimenting with intermittent fasting on some days, or the fasting protocols. And you can experiment with nutrient cycling. You can experiment with absolutely, like, increasing your protein intake is a huge thing for a lot of people on BLE. And so it really depends on sort of how rigid of a thinker you are more than anything else. Like, if you are so rigid that, like, these are my rules, and any sort of disruption to these rules like rocks my world and I can't handle it, then just stick to those rules and don't worry about it. Okay. If you are more flexible in your way of thinking and your way of doing things, you understand the BLE approach, and then you want to start experimenting with modifying this or adding this layer to it, then absolutely do that experimentation. So it's really just, it's more than anything, it's about you as an individual and your degree of rigidity or mental flexibility around, experimenting with rules and guidelines. Christine said, Ari, laugh out loud. You and Alex look beautiful too. Thank you. I've been waiting. It took an hour and 25 minutes for somebody to say that. Next time, can we please try and do that in the first 5 minutes? That'd be great. Thank you. I'm just kidding, folks. Okay. Brianna is definitely a lot more beautiful than I am. She's got that one covered. She's got us beat, my friend. Okay, so let's see if we have any others unique to me. I don't know. Oh, here's one. Okay, I was hoping someone would actually ask this. Oh, there's a good pun here too. Angela said, what's your opinion on neoprene waist belts during exercise? Waste of money. And she spelled waste as like your waist instead of the proper way of spelling waste in this case. So with regard to the spot reduction protocols that I was alluding to earlier, one of the ways that you could potentially increase circulation in an area of your body where you have these stubborn fat stores. Again, this applies to people who are already, as Alex pointed out, at a fairly lean level. Doing this once where you're very overweight is going to be pretty much worthless. But if you're very lean, you have some specific stubborn fat areas that just, you can't get the fat off. In a fasted state, I would say combined with red light therapy, doing things that heat that area, and neoprene belts are actually one of these ways. Now, this is one of these things it's almost kind of humorous, because here I am, this very evidence-focused guy for many years. And yet you have these like total weight loss gimmicky things of like wearing waist, using, pictures on Amazon of people wearing these like neoprene belts while doing aerobics and stuff like that. And you look at them and you're like, oh, for sure, this is a just total waste of money. This is pseudoscience. This is gimmick. But I actually do think that there is a legitimate plausible physiological mechanism by which keeping more heat in that area can bring more blood flow to that area and potentially help you release more fat from that area. So I actually do think that it is a potentially useful thing. And I've experimented with it at one point, and they actually do work. They do keep heat in the area. You do, like, if you go for a walk while wearing one of those belts, for example, around your belly, you'll find that it's covered in sweat afterwards, because it really does heat the area quite effectively. So gimmicky, looks like complete garbage, but I actually do think there's something to it. I'm curious if you guys agree.
I use them when I do cardio too. I always feel like I have to like explain myself to Alex, like when I put it on. But it does. And not only does it bring more blood flow to the area, I have an issue with holding a lot of water, like at different parts of my cycle. And so when I want to look good, like I want to sweat that water off in that area too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's more, for purposes of like, if you want to pick up guys at the beach, or if you want to like go to a photo shoot or something like that. It's obviously temporary when you're talking about getting rid of water. So for anybody who's doing photo shoots as a fitness model,
Events in general.
or events, there you
Like
go.
you have to wear that, tight fitting little black dress.
Yeah, total. Oh, that's true too. Yeah, good point. Brianna, I'll let you guys cover that one. That one's a nice one for you, Brianna. Okay, I think I don't see any others that are really require me. Oh, here's one. Can one be sensitive to red light therapy and cause overstimulation and affect sleep? Yeah, yes and yes. So you shouldn't do red light therapy too close to bed. Like within 60 minutes or so of bed is not a great idea, especially if you're doing it like on the face and in the eyes. Now, if you do it behind you, like on your back, for example, and it's not really blasting your eyes with bright light, then probably not a big problem. But in general, I would say space it at least about 60 minutes away from bedtime. Even though red light wavelengths do not suppress melatonin like blue and green wavelengths do, a sufficiently bright light, even a red light that is at a sufficiently high intensity, can suppress melatonin and can disturb circadian rhythm and disturb sleep. So yeah, that is an issue. Just scrolling here through if there's any others. Okay, Catherine said, I said to Alex on Facebook that it would be great to hear him and Ari rank what's best to invest in dollar-wise, because you can't buy/do all the things. What accounts for the largest part of your fat loss and energy issues is a great way to think about it. Will you comment, assuming the first part of the budget goes to good quality food? Okay, Alex, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah. God, I actually now have to think about what I spend money on. So I good quality food, you want us to not do that, but I do want to emphasize that is number one, is good quality food, because nothing's going to replace that. I would say that and then there's things too. You have to make a clarification between one-time investments and recurring investments, because, for example, I buy Energenesis. I spend money on that on a regular basis because it's the best mitochondrial health energy boosting supplement out there. But there are other compounds.
Yourself a raise, my friend.
All right. But there are other things out there like, well, it's true. And I know that because I helped you make it.
Yeah.
So, but there are other things out there like blue blocking glasses, a treadmill desk, standing workstation. These are things that I've invested in over the years as I decide I want to invest in them, that are a one-time purchase, that like having a treadmill desk is phenomenal for energy levels because it lets you have that low-level movement throughout the day, even if you have to be stuck inside at a computer working. And yeah, it's expensive, but if you break it up over the lifetime that you're going to use it, it comes out to cents per day. And so it's kind of hard for me to personally make a list, because a lot of the biggest things that I do for my health were one-time investments. Move to Arizona where I can get regular, nice level sun exposure throughout the year. Treadmill desk, standing desk, blue blockers. Our Juve red light. We have amber bulbs to use at night so that we have minimal blue light output, but we can still see around our house. We invested in very, very high quality daylight mimicking bulbs for inside, because the sun isn't always shining inside. And when we're working inside, we want to have that bright light.
It's definitely a lifestyle too. People look at like my habits and they're like, oh my God, like that costs so much. But it's been over 15, 20 years that I've been doing this. So every year I get something new.
And I would add to that, this is a pay now or pay later type of thing. Now some of these purchases, like I would say like hydrogen water or like a vibration machine or something like that. Like these are very optional. Like these are not necessities. Okay. But when we talk about things like the lighting in your home, for example, or investing in a gym membership, um, investing in light therapies and things like that, these are things that are pay now or pay later. And what I mean by that is these are things that you either do now to take care of your health, or you deal with the health consequences later, 20, 30 years from now, of not doing them. And you can pay for, doctor's visits to find out what's wrong with you and what's causing these symptoms and why you have a disease that now requires, various drugs or other kinds of doctor's visits to figure out how to fix it, if it's even fixable at all. So the right way to understand these expenses, yes, some are optional, some are not, required. You don't have to go buy a $7,000 sauna or something like that. But a lot of these things are investments that you're making into your health so that you don't have huge bills and, to deal with diseases and symptoms later in life that we know do emerge from not doing these things, right? Yeah. So, there's many different things that we could talk about here, but I would say, like, if you're on a tight budget, definitely invest in like incandescent bulbs. So just a few incandescent bulbs for your living areas that you spend time in at night. So you have that nice indoor, proper lighting that mimics firelight. Get a few bulbs for your, 1 or 2 or 3 bulbs for your bathroom or bathrooms and your bedrooms before you go to sleep, so that you have either amber or red colored light, dim amber or red colored lights in those rooms that don't suppress melatonin. So let's say the total of all those bulbs might cost you something like between $50 and $100. And that's just a great purchase. That's just a small amount of money that is a huge investment in your health. I definitely think red light therapy is a thing to invest in if you can afford it, although it's much more expensive. Then you get into things like saunas, you get into things like really nice mattresses. You get into things like the chili pad. There's a variety of things that you can get into, but look, you can make do without most of these things. Like, and if you're on a tight budget, you can get a lot of the benefits of red light therapy from just going out in the sun regularly. And you can get the benefits of, a bright light therapy device to use in the morning, a sad lamp, by going outdoors and getting bright light outdoors. So if you're on a tight budget, find the ways of doing these things for free or for very cheap. And then, if you're fortunate enough to have more money to play with, then get a sauna. If you can't afford a sauna, then look around and find, some local community center in your area where they have a sauna that you can either use for free or include it in, a $20 or $30 monthly gym membership or something like that. So, if you can't afford a gym membership, then go on YouTube and look at how to do, body weight resistance exercise at home and high intensity interval training, with body weight or minimal equipment at home. There's lots of options and ways to get the job done while spending little to no money. And you can do 80% or 90% of the things that get you there and that really optimize your health without spending a huge chunk of money, without spending, thousands and thousands of dollars. So if you're coming into this just from the frame of like, there's so many things I have to buy, like I have to spend $30,000 in order to be healthy. No, we can help you. There's ways of accomplishing almost any of these objectives without spending thousands of dollars, and we can guide you on how to do that. Okay. I think that is good for me. I have my parents here visiting and they're waiting for me to go have dinner with them. So I think I'm going to run unless there's one more question. Yeah, I think we're good for me. Georgia said, health is always worth whatever you can afford. Ari's right. My mom died at 70 and was sick for most of her life. I'm 75 and take no medicine, and it's because of always trying to figure out what is best for my health. Yeah, this absolutely. This is just so important to understand, guys, that if you don't invest, whether it's money or whether it's time and energy and effort, okay, and these are all, they're all the same unit, okay. You're investing stuff, you're investing your resources in the form of time or energy, effort, and money into your health, okay? And this literally can be the difference between dying of a heart attack unexpectedly at age 53 or getting cancer in your 40s and, you know, being one of those really tragic, you know, people who die way too young, versus living to like 97 or 107 in good health with a body that's functional and a brain that's functional. Like I personally can't imagine anything that is worth more to invest in than that. Like I want to be, I have two little kids. I have a 3.5-year-old son and a 10-month-old daughter. And I want to be around and be healthy to go on adventures and go surf or go rock climb or go on, you know, camping trips with my kids well into old age and hopefully with my grandkids someday. And like, there is literally no more important place for me to spend my money than on accomplishing that objective. So that's the way I look at it personally, and that I obviously think is the right way that everybody should look at it. And I think the problem is, I think the Dalai Lama had a great quote on this, but I'm spacing on the exact words. But you know, the right way to look at it is you're not saving any money by choosing not to invest in your health now. Like it's only going to save you money in the long term, in the grand scheme of things. And I think the human brain is really, really bad about assessing the long-term consequences of our actions today, right? We put the ice cream in our mouth because it gives us that instant gratification, but our brain does not process very well at all what happens if every day for the next 20 years, I put some ice cream in my mouth. What does that lead to 20 years from now, right? That's where our brains really suck at sort of doing the math of that action. And you need to, we have a weakness in that regard, like built into our physiology, our psychology. And so you have to know that, and you have to consciously overcome it by actually training your brain to start to think like that, to start to think like, what actions can I take today to make sure that I live to 90, to 100, to 120 in good health, that I avoid cardiovascular disease, that I avoid diabetes, that I avoid neurological disease. And we have a clear set of actions that we know you can take, and you have the option to invest in your time, your energy, your money in doing those things well to help ensure that outcome. And yeah, that's my attitude. Like, do it. You should train your brain to see things like that clearly, to see those long-term consequences or benefits of your actions that you take today, and take the right actions today so that you're leading to the right outcomes 10 years, 30 years, 50 years from now.
I just want to very quickly and briefly tie that back into the investment in this fat loss program. I want to throw out two figures that a lot of you might find surprising. The first is that on a global scale, there are three things that cost more to the global economy than anything else. And obesity is one of them, and they're all tied for first place. Obesity costs the global economy about 2.8% of all the money produced in the entire world every year. That's the equivalent of smoking. It's also the equivalent of all acts of terrorism and armed violence and war every year. Obesity, smoking, and armed violence are the top three, and they're all tied for first place at about 3% of all the money produced every year. That's how much they cost. The second one is at a more personal level. In the US, every obese human spends an average of 42% more money on healthcare every year than someone that's at a normal body weight. It ends up equating to thousands of dollars every year when you average it out. This program is a speck of that, and it can save you tremendous money in the long run that you can then reinvest into your health.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Like if you expand the math of this into not just, okay, I spend this money and then what does that lead to as far as my bank account in the next 30 days? Okay, well, the answer is you just spent about $300 or $400. If you expand the math to the next decade or two, this $297 that you invested here now saves you thousands or tens of thousands of dollars over time. But more importantly, it's apart from the finance, what it's doing to your bank account, it's adding years to your life and life to those years. And that's ultimately at the end of the day, when you die, it's not like, okay, well, if you have $3,000 versus $500,000 in your bank account, doesn't make that much of a difference. But if you added a decade or two to your life and a lot of amazing experiences in those years, that's what's ultimately gonna matter.
One more statistic for you. One more statistic for you, Ari. The risk of obesity on death has actually been investigated in clinical trials, and over an average time frame of just 2 years, if you drop yourself from an obese body weight down to a normal weight body weight, over 2 years, you reduce your risk of an early death by 20%. If you extend that out 5 or 10 years, you cut your risk of death by more than half. If you extend that out by 30 to 40 to 50 years, your risk of death could very well be 5% of where it would be if you decide to make no change.
Beautiful. Beautifully encyclopedic. I love the way your brain works, my friend. We went from big picture abstract to here's the data supporting everything Ari just told you. I love it. All right, guys. So I'm going to go have dinner with my parents and my wife and my kitties, but
Enjoy.
Brianna and Alex are more than capable to answer everything. And in many cases, on many subjects, know more than I do. So enjoy, have fun, and I will see you again on Saturday.
Perfect, Ari. Okay, so I'm going to let you read this next one.
Where is it? Right here.
Okay. Even if you're menopausal and struggle with lower body fat, I do heavy lifting and optimized protein and macros, paleo foods, and I'm really struggling with fatigue and very stubborn fat on thighs, hips, and rear, especially. Fat loss is such a struggle. Seeing a natural endocrinologist for thyroid and hormones, but so frustrating and not sure how to get the fat loss started again. Okay. Well, there's a lot of...
Let me start by saying that if you're menopausal, that doesn't mean anything. And that's a little extreme. What I'm saying is that those hormonal changes do not prevent you from achieving the body composition you want. They certainly make it more difficult. There is no denying that. But you still have the complete 100% ability in your power to obtain the body composition you want. I told this story on one of the live Q&As, and someone even asked for clarifications in the Facebook group. But my mother is postmenopausal, and she is currently maintaining just over 20% body fat by doing the exact same habits that we've outlined for you in this program. Yes, it is more difficult, but no, it is not important at all. Where do you start? Well, that's going to vary from person to person. You said you have your protein and macros down. You said that you're doing resistance training. So the first thing that comes to mind is, how much do you walk every day? Like, how active are you? Do you just lift weights and then sit on your butt? How are your thyroid doing? How's your energy levels? You said you're fatigued. How can we overcome that?
Yeah. I want to know what your eating looks like. I think that I just don't have enough information here. I also want to know what your hormones look like as well. As far as fatigue, let's get that figured out first. The veins, there's really not much to do other than surgical procedures where they inject saline into them. Oh.
Okay, I'm going to comment. So we've gotten so many comments in here that this whole program we're using actually pushes comments down off the screen so that we can't even read them anymore because we're all the way at the bottom. So if everyone wants to hold off for just a little bit until we get through some more of these comments so that we can keep them on screen and read them and answer them, that would be amazing, because every comment pushes another comment off the screen so it disappears forever. Okay, so with that being said, we'll move on to Christine. Oh, and I'm out of the picture. I feel like you have had many lives for someone who looks so young, Brianna. Is it a concern to have varicose veins on the legs? And if so, is it possible to diminish or get rid of them? Would this be a weight issue or a hormonal issue?
Okay, so yeah, I've had a lot of lives. I'm 35. I'll be 36 in a few months. So I'm sure I look younger than that. I worked in the beauty industry and used a lot of like red light therapy, like since I was young, and creams, and I eat very well. As far as varicose veins, the only thing that I know that permanently gets rid of them is the injecting saline into them. And it can be hormonal and weight issue, or even runners get them because they're putting so much stress on their legs. So I don't know what could have caused yours, but the only thing I know of that gets rid of them permanently is the saline. Okay. For the last 10 years, I've lost 15 pounds each year and couldn't lose more. Gained back each year, someone said. The first 10 or 15 lost is just water weight. How do I know if I'm losing water or fat? Age 70, thin, consistently up to 40, but now 30 pounds overweight with insulin resistance. Well, 15 pounds is not water weight. Very rarely it can be like up to 10 pounds, I'm guessing, if you're obese, like super obese, which it doesn't look like you're obese. Looks like you're overweight maybe, but not obese. Anything to add?
Yeah, I don't think it's water or not a significant amount. I mean, okay, so yeah, so if you just go to like a low carbohydrate diet, for example, then you're going to lose like 5 to 10 pounds instantly, and that's all going to be water. But if this was like 10 or 15 pounds that just came off slowly over time, then that's not water. That's going to be other components of your body, be it fat or lean tissue. To get to your question, though, you know you're losing or gaining water if it happens like within a week. Because yeah, or overnight. If it happens within a couple days or a week, then it's changes in the amount of water your body's carrying, whether you're holding more water or holding less, because your body just simply doesn't operate on that time scale when it comes to changes in your body protein like muscle tissue or your body fat, unless you're grossly overeating. And when I say grossly overeating, I'm saying that in theory, if you wanted to gain 1 pound of fat overnight, you would need to eat 33,500 calories on top of whatever you burned off, which even if you're at a 1,200 calorie maintenance, you would basically need to eat 5,000 calories to gain 1 pound of fat overnight. And I know that, you know, many of you aren't doing that.
As for the insulin resistance, unless you did pancreatic damage, it'll go away as you lose fat.
Exactly. Having too much fat is the fundamental cause of insulin resistance. And so losing fat will resolve that. Stephanie, is there a benefit to taking certain amino acid supplements like P3E and Perfect Amino that allegedly make the protein we eat more bioavailable to our bodies? No, there isn't, unless you are under eating protein. So when you eat protein, be it from a food or a protein powder, it's providing you with those amino acids. And you don't need to take supplemental amino acids unless you are under eating that protein that would otherwise be providing them. There is no benefit to combining the two. And whole food proteins or protein powders are often much more affordable than these amino acid supplements are. So that's usually the better option. Sherry, I found out the local sun tanning place has an infrared cocoon and the red light therapy. Is this what you recommend? That could be great for some whole body red light therapy. But I guess it would really depend on what the spectrum of red light they're using is, what the power output is, ultimately how much is hitting your body. Basically, we would need a lot more information to figure it out. Rebecca, can one be, Ari caused that, or Ari answered that. Sharon, 70 years old. I have been very inactive working on a high stress desk job until 2 weeks ago. I'm very fatigued and many times too tired to accomplish much. My focus is getting my energy back while getting control of my home, indoor and outdoor. In addition, my main goal is to reverse the downhill spiral of poor health. Studying the causes and making changes is overwhelming, or studying the courses and making changes is overwhelming. Would you say it might be good for me to just track my protein eating window and move towards exercise using the Strength Blueprint program to begin with? My sleep cycles are improving. I've lost 6 pounds since over the last month. I see change in my face. I look healthier since getting serious about this program in the last couple weeks. Thank you. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're making progress already. And I think what you just wrote out actually sounds amazing. So we have a whole lesson in the program on stress management. And that lesson should tell you, if anything, that being in that high stress job that you just left was incredibly detrimental for both your health and your waistline. And so the fact that, you've said you've lost 6 pounds already, that could very well just be the reduction in stress. And so, I would continue to foster a healthier, less stressed, and more relaxed mentality while doing what you just listed out. I think that's phenomenal. Focus on getting your protein, focus on time restricted eating with set meals, and focus on just being more active, moving with both the Strength Blueprint as well as just general movement throughout the day with things as easy as walking outdoors, for example. If you have a big yard, I don't know where you live, but if you have grass or woods or a big yard, try doing it barefoot so that you can get some nice electron flow going through yourself in the ground. There is actually quite a bit of research on the benefits of grounding therapy to help improve mood state. So I think what I take away from reading that, Sharon, is that you are currently headed in a very positive direction, and you should keep doing what you plan on doing because you're moving in the right way.
And don't stress about getting through the entire program right now. Like, you have time, like forever. Just do it at your pace and don't be too hard on yourself. You're doing excellent. Like, 2 weeks away from a stressful job is not much time. So already implementing this much is something to be proud of.
Yeah, 100%. Catherine, can metabolic damage that has already been done be repaired? Catherine, I disagree that you have metabolic damage. And I say that based on intensive study of this exact topic for a year. When you look at the most extreme circumstances, such as obese participants that are put on prolonged complete fasting diets where they lose, 1/3 of their entire body weight, there is no metabolic damage. Their metabolic rate declines as it's expected to. When you look at normal weight Army recruits that volunteered to be part of the Minnesota starvation experiment, where for 6 months they went from being at a normal body weight to losing 25% of that normal body weight and ended up looking like skeletons with skin, there was no metabolic damage. 2 things happen when you diet. The first is that when you diet, you lose weight and therefore you burn less calories for the simple fact that you have less body mass that needs to be kept alive. So even just at rest, your basal metabolic rate declines because you don't need as much energy to stay alive. The second part of that is that you're lighter. So any movement that you do is going to burn less calories. I mean, just imagine walking a mile. Do you think it would take more energy for you to walk a mile right now as you are, or for you to walk that same mile wearing a 50-pound weight vest? That's the same concept. When you lose weight, you don't need as many calories in a day because you burn less calories being active because you weigh less, and you don't need as many calories to stay alive. Now, the other part of it is what's called adaptive thermogenesis, and that's where the body actively downregulates your metabolism in an attempt to slow the weight loss. That is a very minor component of the ultimate decline in energy expenditure when you diet. And it completely recovers once you start eating at what would be a new weight maintenance calories. So if you ate, let's say, 1,600 calories to maintain your weight before losing weight, and you diet on 800 calories, and your new weight maintenance calorie intake ends up being 1,200 because of your lower body weight, then whenever you start eating 1,200 calories again, at which would be your new weight maintenance intake, then your metabolic adaptation would disappear. Your thyroid function would normalize, your hormones would return to normal because your body would realize that you're now eating at maintenance rather than dieting. Where people get screwed up is they don't realize that after they lose weight, their calorie intake to maintain it is lower than what it was before they lost weight. So instead of eating at 1,200 calories, they jump back up to 1,600. And that's what causes weight regain. It's not because their metabolism's been damaged. Let's see. Catherine, reworded. If the Biggest Loser graduates followed the fat loss blueprint, will they burn the same calories as a typical thin person when they reach their goal weight? Oh, I didn't even know you could edit your comments, so that was helpful. If they did it from the beginning, yeah. So the big thing with the Biggest Loser study is that when you look, when you look at the methodology of that study, what you find, because I know that one made the headlines and talked about metabolic damage from extreme diets. What happened is they used calorie estimation equations that are based on a general estimate of the population. They didn't use more precise measurements that are based on actual body composition. What happened with the Biggest Losers is that because of their extreme dieting attempts, they lost excessive amounts of muscle tissue, and that drove their metabolic rate down further than it should have otherwise. But it wasn't that they had some form of metabolic damage. It's just that when they were at that body weight, they had less muscle tissue than someone who is never obese would at that same body weight. And having less muscle tissue is going to mean exactly what I just said. Less calories expended when you move around, as well as less calories to keep you alive because muscle tissue is very metabolically active. And this is one of the reasons why we emphasize resistance training and protein intake in the fat loss blueprint, is because those are the two fundamental things that you need to not just build new muscle, but preserve what muscle you have when dieting. Lori, for heat and circulation in place like the waist, is a sweat creating waist trimmer a good idea? I think we already answered that. It was similar to Angela, a little bit below. We answered it earlier about the neoprene waist belts. Yeah, they can be helpful in terms of getting circulation to the area and trapping heat and getting rid of any water retention for stubborn fat areas. Catherine, I take supplements and thyroid meds in the morning and then wait to eat a couple hours. I do have tea or coffee during this time. So is the fast broken when taking my meds and supplements or when eating food? Most medications and supplements will not interfere with fasting. In fact, several can actually amplify it. For example, if you're taking your thyroid hormone in the morning, that can amplify the effects of fasting because it's a thermogenic. Tea and coffee are also going to amplify the effects unless you consume them with a bunch of sugar and cream. But if you just use like a small amount, then I wouldn't worry about it. So generally speaking, your fast is only broken when you consume a notable amount of calories. If you're just consuming, for example, like 20 calories from a little cream or sugar or something, I wouldn't worry about it because it's not an on-off switch. It's a spectrum. You don't just go from fed to fasted to fed. It's you gradually move one way or the other. Christine, I watched Brianna's section on tips and tricks. How do you like to take flax seeds and how much? Is it better to grind or to put in water? Would would it be more ideal to take during 2 weeks in the cycle and then 2 weeks off?
Okay, so the studies that study this is with the oil. So I can't definitively say that ground flax seeds would have the exact same effect on your estrogen levels. It's like 3 tablespoons of oil, so it would replace almost all your fat if you're dieting. If you have low estrogen, I don't know if that's your issue. I wouldn't guess with hormonal things. And a tablespoon of flaxseed ground in like a shake or something isn't really going to give you that much of a boost of estrogen, like where it's going to harm you. So I wouldn't worry about that, adding that. But if you want like an effective dose, I would definitely test your hormones first. You can post them in the group and I will give you further advice. But the studies are done with flaxseed oil. So.
Okay. Danielle, cool. Thank you. That was helpful. And thanks for touching on fruit, Brianna. I normally eat low carbs, so I'm used to high fat. So it's been a transition adding back in carbs, which I don't eat grains and starches. Okay.
Yeah, so carbs are really important for thyroid health and losing fat. And so I think that it's great that you added some carbs back because I think it'll make fat loss so much easier for you.
Yeah, I want to expand on that by saying that from a purely scientific perspective, the amount of carbs or fats in the diet doesn't matter when it comes to body composition. Protein is really the only thing that matters. However, acknowledging that there is individual variability here and ignoring just general preference, because obviously you're going to have a preferred way of eating, and whatever makes you stick to a diet is going to outrule anything else. So ignoring those facts, there is a theoretical basis for preferring to eat some carbohydrates in the diet and avoiding a ketogenic diet exclusively because they optimize thyroid function and they can help give you more energy and keep your stress hormones down. Like, so they can help battle stress and they can help give you more energy. In theory, there's going to be individual differences here. But it's just something to play around with. And some of you, especially if you're currently on a low carb diet, you might find that replacing some of your fat with carbohydrates actually, gives you more energy and benefits your vitality.
Biomarkers, like if you have high cholesterol and on a low carb diet, I would definitely try to add some carbs back in and see what your labs do.
And also if you have trouble sleeping. A lot of women have trouble sleeping at night because they have lower glycogen stores in their liver. So when it, 1 to 3 in the morning rolls around, their liver glycogen is really low. They end up going hypoglycemic and their body shoots out a bunch of adrenaline and cortisol to produce more glucose. So that you don't die. But that, makes you wake up and it gives you that rush feeling like you can't breathe. Maybe that's a cause of night sweats. That is common in women, especially women who get leaner and especially women that who train intensely and eat low carbohydrate diets. So it's something to play around with. Rick, the recommended quantity of protein, 1 to 2 grams per kilogram, works out to a really large amount. How can I eat that much per day? Well, Rick, you would need to make a post in the group and show us what you regularly eat, and we can make recommendations on how to improve it. It's something a lot of people struggle with until it becomes habitual. But it basically just centers around the fact that each of your meals, you need to look at, what foods supply protein here. I should probably eat those first and take advantage of protein powders to get any extra if you need to. Whole foods are obviously preferred, but protein powders can go down a lot easier. Christine, what is the best resource for knowing how much protein, fat, and carbs are in different whole foods? I discovered that I have no idea how much my protein and fat intake is until this Fat Loss Blueprint program. I'm embarrassed to say. You shouldn't be embarrassed. A lot of people are unaware of how much they're eating. And I think that if anything, one of the benefits of tracking your food just temporarily is to just give you an idea of what portion sizes look like and to give you an idea of where you're at currently. As far as the best resource for knowing how much to eat or how much are in different foods, both of us prefer Chronometer because it doesn't just tell you your macros, but it'll let you know how nutrient dense your diet is by telling you how much of the vitamins and minerals you're getting. But there's a lot of options out there. There's Fat Secret. There's what's the other one? MyFitnessPal. I'm sure you could find a bunch, but we prefer Chronometer. B, does your Sleep Fix program provide a lot of additional info beyond the related content in the fat loss blueprint? So the Sleep Fix program actually isn't a program that we're familiar with. That's an Ari one. So make a comment in the group and tag Ari in it, and I'm sure he'll answer. Christine, it is such a treat to have all three of you in this Q&A. Thank you for your time. This is amazing. Thank you. We're glad to be here. B, MyFitnessPal is a great resource for learning the macros. Yep. Tanya, I usually do my morning workouts outside in the sun and then go in to take a cold shower. In the cold hormesis module, you mentioned not doing cold showers after resistance training. Can you elaborate on when is the optimal time to do cold showers and why you shouldn't after a workout? Yeah, so the optimal time is basically any time not, immediately after a workout, or I should say not within like 3 hours or so of working out. And it's because when you work out, it causes a oxidative stress and inflammatory response in the muscle tissue that serves as the basis for your body, for the hormetic effect, where your body says, okay, that's the signal. We need to lay down new muscle tissue. We need to build more mitochondria. We need to make these muscles, bigger, faster, stronger. When you use a cold shower, it blunts the inflammatory and oxidative stress response, and therefore it blunts that hormetic signal. So you're not going to get the same adaptations that you would otherwise. You're not going to have as many mitochondria built. You're not going to have as much new muscle tissue built. Let's see. Angela, what is your take on using HMB in protein shakes for muscle mass preservation? I think it can be helpful if you're under a state of extreme stress and catabolism, like if you have cancer cachexia, if you're sarcopenic, if you are suffering from intense burns. But and it could possibly help if you're doing some extreme dieting, like a protein sparing modified fast in theory. But generally speaking, HMB doesn't have strong research supporting its efficacy. A lot of the research on it came out of the lab of Jacob Wilson and Ryan Lowry, and they have been heavily criticized in the research field for potentially fabricating their data, because their studies showed that when you looked at the actual changes in muscle mass in the participants of their studies, these changes were literally equivalent to young men using anabolic steroids, which is basically unheard of because no supplement's going to mimic injecting super physiological levels of testosterone. It's just unrealistic beyond belief. And so their studies are largely disregarded by the scientific community. And other studies conducted by more other protein researchers with more integrity have tried to mimic their findings and have failed to do so. So I personally don't recommend it outside of highly catabolic conditions. B, I just finished a 12-week cut and I'm near 10% body fat. After celebrating my girlfriend's B-day and eating at a restaurant over this past weekend, I have gone way over on calories 3 days in a row. Any suggestions for slowing and stopping the binging as I come off my cut?
Yeah, that's the only time like reverse dieting actually works, right? Is for psychological aspects, not actually metabolic. So you just need to stop. Like that's I know it's not helpful to hear that, but you have to tell yourself like that you're going to gain this weight and you're going to have to lose it again. And it's very painful to do that, right? You have control over your hands. Remind yourself that like while you're eating, say, I don't have to put this bite in my mouth again. Check in with your body. your body cues, eat mindfully and slowly. That's really the only way to do it. And I would stick to 3 meals a day. If restaurant meals are too triggering coming off of a cut, do not go to a restaurant. Eat your regular foods, just increase your normal foods in your meals, like your calories, if you're trying to maintain. It's obviously too soon for you to go out to eat if you're not handling it well.
Yeah, beautifully said. And I know that it's not always possible, like you said, celebrating your girlfriend's birthday. You can't just say, "Oh, sorry, babe, I can't go out to the restaurant with you because my abs." So I mean, it's the situation's not always going to land in your favor, but
One day is fine though. Like,
yeah, one day is fine.
it's not going to do anything to your body composition. It's the 3 days, and you feel, what I'm getting from your question is you feel like you can't stop. Well, you can. You have that choice. Unfortunately, like, we think we can't, but binging is as simple as training yourself not to binge by telling yourself you have a choice on what you put in your mouth.
Yeah.
Brain Over Binge is an excellent book on this. If you want to pick that up, like on Kindle or something, it can like rework your thought process around the binging process. I could like go on for hours about how to do that, but I think you would get more help by just reading that book this weekend or something.
Yeah. You have control. And I mean, just think about all the success you've had so far. Like, you got down to 10% body fat, which for all the women listening, that's equivalent to being at 20% body fat. That takes a lot.
It's impressive.
It's impressive, and it takes a lot of work and dedication. So you have the tools, you've already used them. So now it's just a matter of reminding yourself of that and using them again to stop yourself from binging. Charlene, can you give an example of 1 to 2 grams per kilogram? I weigh 145 pounds. No, not on this live thing, because I would have to do calculations and try to figure out like an example meal plan and all of that stuff. But that's a perfect question for in the Facebook group. I would love to answer it there for you. Christine, what's the best way to start to calculate our energy expenditure or output for Flux? I'm not sure how to get an idea of this compared to my energy or calorie intake. So there's a lot of calculators out there that will tell you what your basal metabolic rate is. It's also called your resting metabolic rate. You can get an idea of your flux by figuring out what do you burn when you're completely at rest, your resting metabolic rate, and then looking at what's your energy expenditure relative to that. And you might not know what your energy expenditure is. Maybe you have a fitness tracker that gives you an estimation, but the easiest way is to just look at how much you're eating. And if your weight is maintained, like if you're maintaining your weight, then however much you're eating is your actual energy expenditure. And so if you're a small woman with a basal metabolic rate of 1,200 calories and you maintain on 1,400 calories, then you're very active. You don't have a high flux because 1,400 divided by 1,200 is not very much. And so frankly, I guess the idea here isn't to get an exact number, though. The idea is to just increase with gentle movement throughout the day, increase that total daily energy expenditure through regular movement. Tina, does 5-HTP help reduce your appetite taken a half hour before a meal, or just curb your desire for carbs? I ate lunch today, which consisted of about 6 grams of ground turkey or chicken mixed into a bowl of pureed mashed zucchini, cauliflower, and peppers that had been steamed. I was still very hungry shortly after and for most of the afternoon. I don't know why I felt this way today. I've been doing the fat loss blueprint since Saturday without an issue. I bought a used treadmill over the weekend and got my husband to fix it so that it's a treadmill desk, and I have been using it for about 3 hours per day, yesterday and today. I have 100 pounds plus to shred.
Your flux is probably, you're pushing it too hard. With that amount of food, I'm guessing. 5-HTP does reduce your appetite. It works better with carbs. For me, anyways, it does. If I eat a little carbs with it, I just my appetite is shut off if I take 5-HTP. I I would add some fibers if you want to keep that or decrease your activity a little, and that'll control your appetite. Add some fibers or some miracle noodles to that. You're not going to gain any fat weight from any of that stuff. So if you feel a little overfull from those meals, that's a good thing. Like that means you're losing fat and you're keeping your flux high, right? And your burn.
Yeah, one of the things that I touched on in the Flux lesson plan is that there seems to be a threshold for physical activity where when you go beneath the threshold, your appetite increases, but your energy expenditure doesn't. And so you end up gaining weight. But as you become more and more active, your appetite starts to become better regulated with that activity. And so your appetite will start to increase with your activity levels, depending on how much body fat you have and how much food your body thinks you need to eat to help compensate for that activity. And so in your case, Tina, it really does sound like you started being a lot more active and your appetite is starting to be better regulated. And so your body's saying, hey, we need you to eat a little more food. And I know that you don't want to do that, but all that's telling you is that you're in a very extreme calorie deficit right now, and your body just needs a little more help to get its hunger down.
You could eat more calorie containing foods and just slow your weight loss down. But if you want to lose weight more quickly, assuming that your protein is being met, add filler foods like miracle noodles and fiber supplements.
Yeah, and you said you ate 6 grams of ground turkey or chicken mix. I don't know if that was an accurate number, but I just want to emphasize too, make sure that your protein at every meal is on point, because that's really going to help. Maria, thank God I don't want to track calories.
We both don't track.
Yeah, both of us have tracked historically. We did it for years.
Yep. That's why we know like calorie amounts without looking them up. Like
it made us very good at estimating portion sizes and getting all of that figured out. But we both actually, was it around your cancer diagnosis?
Yeah.
We both just mutually decided to stop tracking together because we got tired with trying to deal with it. And so for the past year now, we haven't tracked it all, and we've become much more comfortable with it.
Well, and I've done photo shoots since then, and I didn't even track going into those. And I still leaned out very nicely.
It's just because you develop habits and certain principles, and so you know how to modify your diet and activity in a way that leads to the outcomes that you want. Lisa, this may have been covered, but is there a recommendation to input for fat or carbs in the chronometer? It depends on your preference. There is no recommendation. The only thing I care about for everyone listening is protein. I want you all to hit your protein. I don't care about your carbs or fats. Do whatever you find pleasurable, or not pleasurable, but whatever will increase your adherence. Rebecca, or do you have something to add?
Well, yeah, there's ways to toggle your percentages of carbs and fats in the settings. You just go in there and you can set it.
Rebecca, so grateful for you all. Absolutely love this and appreciate you. Oh, thank you. We appreciate you too. Sorry, our cat Tara here has been clawing at my leg for an hour now because she wants to be held, but we're trying to do this. Molly, joining late, will there be a recording? Yes, there will. Jessica, is tracking your calories, like you mentioned, to determine maintenance also the way you would be able to see if you're increasing your flux? In other words, is there any way to determine how many additional calories you're burning as you increase activity? I imagine at the beginning here, I'm just starting resistance workouts. It's hardly burning any calories at all. It's really a tough one. It really is, because you're never going to get a super accurate estimate of how much you're burning unless you're somehow able to get into a research study where they lock you in a metabolic ward. But other than that, you're just going on estimates. If wherever you're at right now with your habits, however much you're eating and maintaining your weight, that's your starting point. And so what you can do to get an idea of how many extra calories you're burning is simply just start being more active, developing more of these activity habits. If your body weight starts to go down, then you know you've established enough of a deficit to make a notable impact on your fat mass. And then you could increase how much you're eating if you want to prevent that, or you could just ride it out until you reach a new weight stabilization point. But yeah, it's a tough one because I have no idea how much I burn in a given day. All I know is that because I don't track, I eat somewhere between 3,200 and 4,000 calories every day. And sometimes I eat less, sometimes I eat more, but my weight stays relatively stable. And I mean, it's the same for Brianna. Like we don't know how much we burn. All we know is that we have a certain like range of intake that we tend to average, and our weight stays stable. So our expenditure is probably somewhere in that range too, where everything ends up balancing out. If I wanted to diet and get leaner, then I would probably drop my calories down to 2,800, see what happens, and then go from there as I need to. Or I would just be more active. Like right now, I only get 14,000 steps a day because I'm spending more time working. If I needed to diet down, I could either diet or I could just, start getting 20,000 steps per day. Because if I'm walking an extra 6,000 steps, then I guarantee I'm burning more energy. That's just fact. Or I could do both in combination. I don't think that knowing hard numbers is important. It's just about knowing what are your habits and how can we modify them to obtain the goals that we want. Laurel, did you say larch tree fiber?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Rebecca, can you heat resistant starch the next day? Only modestly. I think if you exceed a temperature of like 130 degrees, it degrades. So you can heat it up enough to take the chill off, but you can't like recook it. That would just completely get rid of it again. Robin, is there an increased risk of osteoporosis with increased protein, especially in postmenopausal women? Oh, I love this one. And I say I love this one because one of my little side things I was working on that I paused to do this program was an entire book on everything about protein, and osteoporosis is in there. So there's a thing called the acid ash hypothesis where protein's acidic. It is. And so when you eat protein, your body needs to metabolize that acidity to maintain the pH of your blood, to maintain the acidity of your blood. And one of the ways it does that is it can leach calcium from the bone to neutralize the acids from the protein. So there's this idea, eat protein, leach calcium from bone, cause osteoporosis. It's logical, right? Except that studies modifying protein intake of the diet have actually shown that it has no effect on whole body calcium balance, and that increasing protein intake in the aging population actually reduces the risk of osteoporosis and increases bone density. How does it do that? Because protein increases your intestinal absorption of calcium from food. Protein also increases growth factor signaling. That facilitates the deposition of more bone into your bone tissue. And the other part of it too I want to mention is that there's one study in particular that was done in 1995 where the researcher gave 21 different diets to people that varied in their protein and their potassium content, because potassium is one of the primary alkaline buffers in the blood that buffers protein. What he found is that 70% of the acid load in your body is predicted by how much potassium you are consuming relative to protein. So basically I say, no, it's not a concern, but you should probably be eating a lot of vegetables with your protein because the potassium from them helps neutralize any impact protein would have in theory. And then you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get, no acid production by protein, but you're still getting the anabolic effects and the enhanced calcium absorption of protein. Okay, so we also are going to have to run soon, so we're going to give it another 10 minutes, and then we also have to get going. But a lot of these questions that are in here, please, if we didn't get to yours, remember it, write it down, because we're doing 2 of these per week. And we're going to get through every question, eventually. There's a lot of them, but we promise to get through as many as we can at each session. So, Lynn, being 30 to 30 pounds overweight and 61 years old, is there a way to avoid extra skin or the creep skin? So I think I'm not sure what you're asking. I'm wondering if you might mean that asking if there's a way to avoid loose skin when you diet. And the answer is no. Loose skin is largely determined by genetics because it has to do with the strength of the collagen fibrils in your skin. And when you lose a lot of weight, you're going to have a lot of loose skin if your skin is not very elastic, because when it's elastic, it can stretch and then return, stretch, return. If you don't have that ability, it's just going to stay stretched out. The only thing that can get rid of it is going to be surgery. Fasting doesn't do it. And I've explained why in a post in the Fat Loss Blueprint, if y'all search for just like loose skin. And you could also consider, as far as like people say that autophagy from fasting helps, your body eats up the skin and gets rid of it. And that's not true. Your skin breaks down and then your body replaces it with new skin cells in the exact amount that was broken down. There is no net loss or gain when you're fasted. And we have tracer studies that demonstrate this. You could also supplement hydrolyzed collagen to increase skin collagen turnover.
Nothing will. I'm guessing the creep skin that she's talking about is just natural, like gravity from aging, and there's nothing to combat that either. Like that just happens. Other than a solid diet that can prevent some of it, but everyone will get it.
What about cosmetics?
No cream will get rid of that.
Any surgical procedures?
Surgical procedures like skin removal.
Okay. So yeah, again, we're at it. Surgery is going to be the big one there. And I know that that's not ideal, but unfortunately, you have to accept it or that's your option. So Catherine, I said to Alex on Facebook that it would be great to hear him. Oh, okay. That one was already answered. Karine, sorry, joined late. I'm currently doing alternate day fasting and worrying about hypothyroidism. Any advice for Hashimoto's people in terms of ADF? I did keto 2 years ago and did a few 3 to 5 day fasts and lost my outer eyebrows. So if you have Hashimoto's, then you should be medicated. You should be on thyroid hormone. And in that case, you are literally replacing what your body wouldn't make otherwise. And
there's no natural supplement that will help you. I had a hard time accepting that one too when I found out I was hypothyroid.
Yeah.
There's nothing.
Nothing's going to help you, especially in Hashimoto's. You can definitely reduce your intake of antigens that could aggravate it, like gluten and soy.
And that'll reduce antibodies, but it's not going to make your thyroid function normally again.
Correct. And so, I mean,
there's some natural options though, like WP or Nature-Throid or.
Yeah, there are natural thyroid options, but the point being is that you're going to be taking a thyroid medication to make up for the deficit of your body. And that is going to override any potential risk for your thyroid in terms of like doing alternate day fasting. So I wouldn't worry about that. Virginia, regarding hormone testing, she needs a doctor trained in hormone balance. Dutch test is a good option. They can recommend skilled practitioners.
Yep. I like the Dutch test.
Lori, thank you for that answer. It takes some stress off me, especially as I have traumatic brain injury. I'll track protein, just make sure that and just make sure I'm where I think I am. The other question is this. I'm following Brightline Eating and looking at moving my dinner fat to breakfast and replacing my dinner protein with protein powder since I exercise most late afternoon and would be eating within an hour after that. Also moving lunch fruit to breakfast and removing the fruit from lunch. Does this sound like a solid shift decision? Yeah, I think that sounds fine to me. A lot of people really do enjoy eating fats earlier in the day and carbohydrates later in the day because the carbs tend to help people fall asleep. So I think that protein powder after you exercise with your dinner is a great option. So yeah, I'm all for it. Let's see. Brianna, thank you for sharing your inspiring journey to overcome melanoma. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Seborrheic keratosis are skin barnacles. 40% hydrogen peroxide is suggested. Thoughts? For this one, I don't think either of us have any thoughts off the top of our head.
No, I'd have to look into
Yeah. Why don't you post this as a question in the Facebook group, and then that way we can definitely look into it a little more and get back to you with a better answer. Because right now, I think we can confidently say that we don't know. But we can find out. Ramos. Oh, I love that. Training for a half marathon. Can you still fast on off days? Well, I mean, yeah, you can. Is it going to impact your performance during the half marathon and during your training? Yeah, probably. So if you want to accept reduced performance, because then sure. You have to just ask yourself what your goal is. Is your goal to do the half marathon because you want to tell yourself you can? If so, then do whatever you want because performance doesn't matter. But if your goal is to perform as best you can, then no, it wouldn't be ideal because you want to facilitate your recovery. Okay, so we're going to take off here in about 4 minutes. So I'm going to just do like 1 or 2 more questions. Alyssa, thanks so much for answering my question about sweating. I get cold very easily and have trouble keeping warm at night, but blankets make me sweat. I think you could be right regarding the poor glucose management because I eat a lot of sugar and get stressed a lot. Would you agree? As always, thanks so much for being so kind with your time.
Yes, that could be a low blood sugar episode if you're eating a lot of sugar, especially before bed. Like you could just have reactive hypoglycemia that happens in the middle of the night and causes a stress response. So I would decrease the sugar. I still would want to see your hormone panel, but decrease your sugar first, see how that works. I mean, that's a really quick fix too. You'll see if it helps.
Yeah, and potentially, if possible, replace the sugar with some more slowly digesting starches, because the goal isn't to make, right now you're going like this, you're going up and then spiking down. And the goal isn't to get rid of that only so that the outcome is you just go straight down overnight. But instead, let's get some carbs in you so that you have a small rise and you stay steady throughout the night. And that way you don't see that drop in blood glucose to hypoglycemic levels, and you don't get that stress response. Okay, Christine, I'm finding Brianna very relatable. I think she is being very honest and has probably been through a lot we don't know about to get where she is now and what she has been able to achieve. Also, I like Brianna, Alex, and Ari's passion and what is optimal. Thank you, Christine. That's very kind.
Yeah, there was definitely some not very nice comments written about me. So that was very sweet and I appreciate it. I really do. Yeah, we all have our stories, and I mean, you can't judge someone by what they look like. And I've dealt with that my entire life. Like people thinking I'm just dumb, right? Because I fit that stereotype. So let's just love people and be nice, right?
Yeah. I guess the only thing I would want to put there is Brianna didn't become super passionate about health and her own health out of thin air. So, maybe she'll share her story with y'all one day. but I'll leave that up to her. So, okay, 1.5 minutes. Melanie, it's good to hear that you guys have been overweight and actually understand our journey.
Yeah, I gained a good 40 pounds right after my divorce within 2 months. So I was definitely comforting myself with food. I've been like, I have the genetic predisposition. I have all the genes to get very big. So my habits are there for a reason. Like, I have to adhere to certain habits or I gain weight very rapidly and quickly.
Yeah, you know, I think this might actually be a good place to kind of end is on this thought. It sounds like Ari's been here too. He's been overweight and then he was down at 7% body fat. Both Brianna and myself have also been overweight previously. That's actually kind of how we started. And then what ended up happening is we became so obsessive with getting lean that we went down to unhealthy body compositions for prolonged periods of time. Brianna was maintaining 12 to 13% body fat for years. I was during college, I was walking around at 5 to 6% body fat for 2 to 3 years, just year round, which took a completely whole other level of neuroticism that because we got so ingrained in these habits, it actually didn't feel like we were being neurotic. What we were doing seemed normal to us, but it certainly wasn't healthy. And it was certainly neurotic, even though it didn't seem like it was to us at the time. And now we've kind of settled in at a healthy mindset where we've let go. We don't track calories anymore. We don't track our macros. We just, take comfort in knowing that we have certain lifestyle habits, like we go for a long morning walk. We use standing workstations. We get regular sun exposure. We go for walks after dinner. We do time restricted feeding. We only eat 3 meals per day. We just do certain habits that we know are going to maintain a healthy body composition in the long run. And we forget about the little minor details. And so that's one of the reasons we want to stress that with a lot of you when we say, like, yeah, track your protein, maybe track your calories to give you an idea of what you're dealing with, because that information, just knowing what a standard portion of something looks like, is going to benefit you for the rest of your life. But it's certainly not something that you need to do forever. It's just a stepping stone.
Well, and I think that a lot of people see themselves as overweight as that being a binge eating disorder, and that people that are super thin are of a completely different, unrelatable mindset. And that's not true at all. It's the same mindset. It's just on different sides of the spectrum. Like, we're restricting so hard to get super lean. And I mean, I've been on both sides of the spectrum. It's easy to swing. And then people that are overweight are binging so hard that they're just gaining weight rapidly. I mean, it's the same disordered mindset around food, and we're trying to prevent that in this program.
Okay, and so I am actually going to answer one more because I really just want to give a solid answer to Bernardo here. Can I please get some tips on slowing or stopping binging after cutting to 10% body fat and now transitioning to maintenance? I was losing at 0.5% per week, so it was healthy and a slow cut. He's currently 133 pounds, 160 grams of protein per day, tracking calories and macros. Okay, so I just want to give you a quick answer. Protein intake looks good. You got down to 10% body fat, so you know how much you were eating. I don't know how much that was, but wherever it was at, I just want you to start tracking again, add 400 calories, and call it good.
3 meals a day
Seriously,
prevent the binging too.
when I say that, and stick to 3 meals per day, because that'll help prevent the binging too. But when I say add 400 calories, your metabolic rate has been adaptively downregulated in an attempt to prevent you from losing weight. I don't know what the extent of that downregulation is. It's usually anywhere from 200 to 400 calories. And so when I say add 400 calories back, that's because if you add some calories back, but you're still below your maintenance, your body still thinks you're dieting, even though you're just dieting even slower than you were before. You're just prolonging the diet. Add 400 calories back. You're going to gain some water. You might gain back a very minor amount of body fat that's going to be completely insignificant. because maybe you're only maintaining on 300 calories more, and I'm telling you to add in 400. It's not a big difference. It's not going to matter. What it is going to do is it is going to tell your body you have energy available. It's going to tell your body you're not starving. It's going to get rid of that binging guy in the back of your head that's part of your lizard brain telling you eat
Before it
more.
becomes a habit, because binging does become a habit after you restore your weight, and so you don't want to get into that sticky area like after you feed your survival response, right?
Yeah, you don't want to do it. You don't want to let this binging continue, because as it continues, it's just going to become more and more ingrained in your subconscious, and then it's going to be harder to break. So
I think getting the book Brain Over Binge is very important for actionable steps tonight.
yeah, so I mean, if you want actionable steps, buy Brain Over Binge. In the meantime, whatever you did, you were tracking to get down to 10%, I'm guessing. If so, add 400 calories back. If not, that's just add like 2 cups of rice to your diet. That would be like 360 calories. That would be good. Like just add some food back. You can do it. Okay, so I'm going to scroll up to the top. People saying thank you. Will there be a replay? Yes, there will be a replay. Ari will take care of all that. Lori, Brianna, I found you strongly inspirational. I have many lifetimes in my 55 years, and I feel you relate at your age. She is incredibly wise for her youth. I will say that. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you all really enjoyed this, and so I'm really happy to hear that. Please, continue to ask questions in the Facebook Fat Loss Blueprint Facebook group. We will continue to answer. I'm spending about 6 to 7 hours a day trying to be in there answering questions currently, and that's going to happen for the foreseeable future. We're going to be doing these every Tuesday and every Saturday. So if you can make it to all of them, great. And we're going to be doing that for the next 2 months, I think. So 8 more weeks, you get to listen to us talk to you for 2 to 3 hours on Tuesdays and Saturdays. So if we didn't get to your question, ask in the group, or save it for the Saturday, and join in early. Make sure you get your question in there while other people are still saying hello, and that we'll answer it before any others. So thank you, everyone. Have an excellent night.